So we start on page 43 with city development, the last two submissions on the bottom of page 43. So, welcome Anna, welcome Nicola. And can I reiterate that, and suggest that we restrict our discussion to suggestions about if you want to change the staff comments or actually moving something that you want to change. But there isn't time to perhaps give full attention to everything if it's not pertinent. So, Councillor McTavish.
Yeah, well, I've got two questions, and they're things that pertain to city development, but which aren't listed in the decision sheet. So, one is water fountains. Mark Evans.
It is in there somewhere.
It's underwater though.
Oh.
Yeah. So my question is to Anna, and it is, when city development are doing centres upgrades in particular, is it going to, are water fountains going to be considered as part of that work, as part of general amenities upgrades? And if not, can they be?
Well, usually the process by which we do those projects is heavily involved in consultation with those communities. And so a lot of the ideas actually come from the communities themselves, and whatever ideas they have will be given due consideration. So if in a centre, in the consultation with those shop owners and whomever else participates in that consultation, they raise that they think it's suitable or desirable to have a water fountain, we would consider that as a design element, but we don't have a sort of a tick box as such in terms of design elements that we go through where we kind of tick across water fountains. So I guess it's a bit more responsive to the actual area and what people's vision is for it, but I don't see why we wouldn't consider it if that was something that there was a desire for.
So if we want a more blanket position than that, we need to move a motion that you consider water fountains in whilst doing amenities upgrades?
I wouldn't recommend that. To me personally, I don't think design should be a tick box exercise that you go through various design elements, and I think it has to be more organic about the design process involves people expressing a vision about the place and what it's going to be used for, what its function is and what they see, and then I think the designers understand different elements that can be put into the design to achieve that vision, and certainly they would always consider any type of design element like that if it were appropriate. I don't know that if you pass a motion to consider that, do we have a motion to have an entire tick list of design elements? I mean, I think they will look at all of those things anyways in due course.
Can I just ask about that? Because I also had noticed the same submission and thought it was the lack of drinking fountains was actually an omission in our urban design. And I wasn't sure how, I've got it on my list of things to discuss, but clearly having the whole palette of possibilities sitting out there for the designer to think of hasn't worked. And I'm just wondering if we couldn't just put it into the system that we have a request that in terms of general urban design that elements such as be considered.
Okay, well I think this is, I think that would be best and most appropriately brought to community and environment.
That's fine.
Because it's not going to impact on the annual plan in any case. Yep. So.
Yep, I think probably more regulatory and planning.
Oh,
so I'll
we can bring it to each other.
Sorry, can I just clarify that when you said water fountain, I thought like a trickling amenity feature. I didn't hear drinking fountain. To me, a drinking fountain is not the same as a water fountain. A water fountain is what we have in the Octagon.
A trickling of either way.
Are you aware of this?
It's not going to happen in this annual plan, so we don't need to address it now.
You can drink it then.
To me, that's a different consideration, because that's in the line with toilets and things, and potentially you could have a policy around like the placement of toilets and drinking fountains and so on, but we can do some further work on that.
Well, as I say, we'll bring it through the committee system, because this is not, it won't be as appropriate. Councillor Kelly.
Speaking of water drinking fountains and such like, it occurred to me listening to Dr. Bevan the other day that there would be a reasonable chance of fitting his suggestion in with community doing things on community-owned property that we talked about the other day, insofar as I reckon if I'd gone to him and afterwards and said a drinking fountain costs X amount, how about you sponsor one for the corner of Alhambra, he might well do. Is there any room for sort of community or individual inspired contributions to those things? I don't know whether that comes under community or infrastructure, or
I think again, I think that's
where does it come under?
It would come under this, should be brought through as a committee.
Because it is a financial
No, yeah, but it's not a financial thing in the upcoming annual plan.
Yeah, cool.
So that's the place to bring it here.
Just as a quick response, we have looked at we have a very, very small street trees and amenity remnant budget, and we have looked at as a way of stretching that money, of co-funding things. So absolutely, we think that's an excellent idea, and we are looking at a way of increasing the amount of times that happens, where you might have seats or rubbish bins or something outside of a business, and the business desires it, and they co-fund those amenities going in. So I think we have thought that also is a good idea.
Right, moving on from page 43 to 44.
Yes.
Mr. Welsh.
No. The question is about Marilyn Richardson, who talks about permanent road closures, and I'm not quite sure if this is the same one, that the pedestrianisation that Georgie and Mr. Alexi put in. They're not put together, but I'm wanting to deal with them together. I think they both come up. This is Marilyn Richardson is on this page, but the other one isn't on this page.
So they're both about the same thing?
Yes, they're both about pedestrianisation.
Yeah, so
Aaron and I have both got proposed motions which Jenny could put up. They could be blended together. They're not counter, but we haven't quite had an opportunity to do that.
do they impact on this plan? Or?
Yes, they do, because they give the opportunity. In fact, drinking fountains could come under it as well. Mine does, in that it says that the council, when considering areas for pedestrianisation, look to community funding opportunities in order to enable trials at earliest appropriate time. So we might put something in, but the funding would have to come from, and it takes on from the submission that, so the resolution we've already passed with Councillor McTavish's yesterday, that if a community group really wanted to do something, they were prepared to put money in, we can do it. And we need to empower them. And this is one that I think that funding could be used for.
Okay.
Councillor Wilson's is the bottom one and Councillor Hawkins is the top.
I don't.
Is that any more, Alicia? They can be taken separately, but they should be taken.
So you want to do them? You want to keep them separate?
Well, yes, but we could discuss them together. I think they sit well together.
Well, no. In terms of
They're different conversations.
Okay.
okay, then I suggest that we just you've moved it. The top one is yours, Councillor Hawkins?
Yeah.
Is there a seconder for the top one?
Yeah.
Yeah, seconded by Councillor Benson Pope. Do you wish to speak to it?
Obviously,
Right, okay. So we're looking at the top one, councillors. Council staff develop options to trial the pedestrianisation of the Lower Octagon and the first block of Lower Stewart Street from the Octagon to Moorhead Place. Discussion. Councillor Coe.
Can that be done within current staff abilities? Does it have a financial implication?
There is already some work in the work programme for staff to spend some time thinking about this stuff, so there is a piece of work there. So to look at it, doing it on the other hand would require resource, which is the second of these two resolutions about looking at community funding opportunities.
Councillor Wilson.
I really like this motion. I would ask though that the mover and the seconder, albeit expressing a view on priority, didn't limit it just to these areas in order that should, for various reasons, a different area be more suitable for pedestrianisation trials, that we don't have to come back to council to get that resolution.
Well, we'd have to come back anyway because this is about developing options. So at this point, you're simply making a decision to allow us to develop options. We'd have to come back to you before any form of implementation. So yeah, for these.
No, but I don't want to limit it to the lower Octagon. It may be that the staff have other work that says actually George Street would be better in the first instance. And so can we just broaden that to not just be limited to...
But hang on, I thought that, my understanding is that what you're talking about is taken into account in your motion. We haven't got to that yet.
No, I'm talking about this motion is limited only to lower Octagon as a priority. I totally understand that. But that if the lower Octagon wasn't suitable, that a different area would be considered before it came back to us.
My understanding would be that if the lower Octagon wasn't suitable, that would come out in the report about the suitability of the lower Octagon.
And something you might delay the But then you wouldn't have looked at the other one.
We will have, because staff were already planning to look at a couple of other areas. So we were already planning to come back to you with some thinking about that. So we'll make sure that all of those various pieces are rolled together.
Councillor Benson.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It doesn't seem to me that this is exclusive. It doesn't say, but nowhere else. And there's already a comment on the page that we're looking at that says that there's this other work happening about what might be considered for pedestrianisation. But Mr Chairman, this is a direct response to a submission, I think a very good one, from inspired submitters who came when you were absent the other day, when you had another commitment.
How did they know?
They knew you would have supported it anyway. And in light of the briefing that we all enjoyed from the expat Dunedin woman who works in urban design in New York about simple, easy trials, it seems to me that this would be a really good one to look at considering to see what various levels of, quite low level of cost I would have thought, perhaps foreshadowing what's to come, funded by someone else, there could be for, I think, a timely look at a part of our urban shape. So I'm thoroughly behind a report like this that will come back to us and we can then fight about how far people would want to go or not.
Councillor Spain.
I'm quite supportive, but I have a few question marks that hang over my head. And that is, we're about to head towards a major budget expenditure on the rejuvenation of George Street. And if we run with this trial and the desire to do it, I'm not sure what impact that might have should there then be an expression of interest to pedestrianise George Street, which may then mean we have some traffic problems. So I think I tend to favour the comment that Councillor Wilson has made. There's a bigger picture here that we need to be confident of, and I would like to think that we looked at the possibilities of pedestrianisation as a result of the submitter's submission in the central city, rather than going to all the work of a trial in the lower Octagon and then deciding that because someone wants to do something in George Street or somewhere else that we've cut off our options or made promises that in the end we can't keep because of some other... So I think there's a bigger bit of work that needs to be done on pedestrianisation that may lead to this, or it may lead to another part of our central city being worked on.
Councillor Thompson.
Well, I just think we need to get a little bit of realism into this. I think that if we are looking at doing a trial, I find it very difficult to envisage doing a trial in George Street. The amount of change that one would have to put in place to do that trial would be extremely significant. If you want to, or if we, because I support this, if we want to socialise the notion of pedestrian precincts within our central city area, then we may wish to do that. I think we should do that in a slightly more gradual and in a way in which enables you to get some acceptance. If we want to see what an argument really looks like, start talking about doing a pedestrianisation trial of George Street. I also think that one of the difficulties you have when you do a trial is that unless you want to spend a lot of money on the trial, you don't actually socialise the concept very well, because all you do is put some road barriers up and have some planters with some trees stuck in the middle of it. You know, there's still people tripping over footpaths and wondering whether there's a car going to come around, or edges, I mean. So I don't think we should be trying to broaden it too much. Let's look at something that might be possible, and I think that that's what the submitters brought to us, is something that might be possible, something that, from at least what they said, they'd actually spoken with people in the area about. And I think you potentially could socialise this too around a major event or something like that that gives you a reason to launch it. For example, we know that there's a lot of hospitality in that particular area. Every time we have a rugby test or something like that, they want to spill out onto the footpath, and we have God knows how many expensive hearings to tell them what they can and can't do. You know, you might want to actually use an opportunity like this to turn it into an area that people feel like is a pedestrian precinct. So I think I certainly support it, but I just don't think we should be frightening the horses by suggesting something any wider.
Councillor Hall. Over the speakers. Councillor Hawkins, do you wish to finish up?
Yeah, thank you. I fully concur with Councillor Thompson's softly approach in this regard, and I don't think that it is mutually exclusive with any broader work that we might be planning to do further along the line with regards to central city revitalisation, long overdue that it is. This report in a lot of ways would be a solid first step towards that work going on. We talk a lot about attracting talent and retaining young people to live in our city, and what we have in this situation is talented young people coming to us and telling us exactly and reasonably thoroughly about how they want their city to look like, and I think that we owe them the courtesy of taking their work one step further to see if those things are actually practicable. We shouldn't be scared about being ambitious about our downtown area. For me, one of the greatest things about the Rugby World Cup in 2011 was exactly this, was having a pedestrian precinct in the centre of the city that people could walk around in, that had people playing music and treating it like it was their downtown district. How very cosmopolitan and worldly we felt for 2 weeks, and how fantastic would it be if, albeit not on that same scale, such a culture were allowed the opportunity to develop here in Dunedin in the long term. I firmly believe that the amenity values will be profound, and I also believe that it will be economically beneficial to our downtown district, as international evidence suggests pedestrian and cycle-friendly areas are. So I'll be supporting this, obviously, and I urge you to the same.
So, I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now, on to the second one, the lower one. Is there a seconder for this? Councillor McTavish. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to...
Just to point out that this was, there were, I think, 3 areas that were discussed for pedestrianisation, and I'm not going to forget the St Clair area. that was considered as well. So that may be a community that wants to consider this work as well. So I'm just going to support it, but I think it's consistent with the motion that we've already made, but I wanted to articulate it quite specifically.
Yep. Other speakers? Councillor Hawkins.
No, I just had a question for the mover, I suppose, as to what is implied by community funding. Is it the community funding it, or what?
Look, it's about the very point that Councillor Calvert also made. It could be pedestrianisation or infrastructure, but it's the community may come up with a really good something to put somewhere that we're really happy with, and if they're going to fund it, then why do we make it a difficulty? But for me, it may be crowdfunding. We could put a project up and say, are people wanting to buy into this over and above their rates as a community project, and see if there is that willingness to do it. The only thing is that you don't want to do some of this stuff in the wrong season, and hence the words appropriate time.
No, but I would be getting into discussion if I took that question any further, I think.
But we are in discussion.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I do have concerns with that implication, particularly with, and I realise that the intent is broader than the previous motion, but with regards to the previous motion and the areas around it, I do wonder who exactly the mover is suggesting those targeted rates be levied against. In the case of our
correction, I don't think.
I didn't say targeted rates. I quite clearly said crowdfunding.
Who would be expected to pay for these things, particularly in an area of the city, as I'm sure you're all aware by now, doesn't have access to all of the facilities we offer our residential community, recycling.
We don't charge them for that.
No, I just think that I'm a little sceptical about. I mean, I understand the intent, but I think that the more we expect the community to be funding their own amenities and infrastructure, it's a slippery slope for me, to be honest.
It's all the community.
Oh.
All right, any further speakers? There being none, I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now,
I'm presuming we're going to page 45 in the cathedral.
well, we've done page 44, so yeah, that's the next one.
I've got a motion that Jenny's got.
For
The David Tucker from St Paul's Cathedral. I will acknowledge that I got married in this church. I've been a member of that church before, but haven't had any association for the last 20 years. Just but I don't think I'm conflicted at all.
you have no denominational conflict. Righto.
Staff are confused, your worship, because we've moved on to city property.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, we are. Now, but I'm also aware, Bob Hazelton, you were here for
We've got to go back to district plan.
district plan. Oh,
Yeah,
right.
page
So there's
17.
another one.
So you take the word two out of the city.
Yeah, I'll deal with that when
So, are there more for
Page 17?
17?
Oh.
We'll come back to you.
Okay, that's fine, sorry.
We'll just,
17 and 1
page
7.
page 17.
District plan and forest. And East Park Street. Did we do East Park Street? No, but we've done the heritage side.
Anything on page 17? Okay,
Could we refer the one on the biodiversity, Kathy Rufo, to civic grants? And the Lana Evans one, could we, our response please be that her submission be referred as a small grants application to community grants. It was $310. It would be better dealt with under the community
Which
grants.
one is this, councillor?
Lani Evans.
Oh, yes. 18. We're on, yeah, we've moved. We've gone. Okay, so that's just, that one is just a change of response, of comment?
Yes, that would be referred, the submission we dealt with is by way of a small grants application, and that, and The other one is that Kathy Rufo's be dealt with under civic grants later today.
Okay.
Through the chair, can we seek clarification of the one about Kathy Rufo?
Yeah, so the biodiversity grants aren't dealt with through the civic grants. There's a separate biodiversity fund to which
they can apply.
So
Just seek clarification around that. Is it staff's understanding that the funding that they are seeking is for a specific project on private land, in which case the biodiversity fund would apply up to a total of $5,000? And given that this is a $10,000 grant for work that I understand is on both private and public land, would they still qualify?
well, I think often how people get around the 5,000 is they stage their projects. I don't know the specifics of this, so I can't comment on that. But yes.
And that's why I think it's more appropriately dealt with by civic grants, but I don't think it does, because it is a staged year by year project.
It's what?
It's a year by year project already, and it's factored into the price. It's too much for biodiversity.
Yeah, I need to look at it more detail.
Okay, those two are taken care of. That's page 18.
Yep. In relation to the 50% Jenny Winter issue raised by Save the Otago Peninsula, I think that should be considered as part of the as part of the environment strategy work, and whatever falls out of that. Is that right?
Which one are you referring to?
101110.
Jenny Winter. So, stop.
So she asked or they raised the issue of the relative contribution from the Biodiversity Fund in relation to not-for-profits and work that not-for-profits were undertaking on private land. And she said that the contribution from the Biodiversity Fund should be over and above the 30% which is currently allocated. So in relation to that, I guess, phrasing it as a question, is there work underway to review the Biodiversity Fund terms of reference, and can that be considered as part of that work?
Yes and yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's, I think page 19 we have dealt with. I've got a mark for it. Yes, we went through the heritage. We did that.
You did all the heritage environment. Just trying to find it.
Sculptures come later.
You want to put it in clean or something? I think just...
There were two issues raised by the Midwinter Carnival Trust in relation to signage, the signage out here, which I assume can be picked up by planning and regulatory, and signage issues in terms of events and the district plan, which I think probably also sit with planning and regulatory. So I'll leave that.
I think we'll finish civic development now.
Where are we going?
Thanks.
Who?
Okay. Oh, yeah, Rhonda's here. Yeah, property.
We'll do property now.
Interpretation.
I think we've done Anna and Nicola. I think we've done with city development. Rebecca?
Yep, we're done. Thanks.
Oh, that's right. That was the one you want to come up, Glenn? Can you point us to where this page?
It's on page 85 of the decision sheet. It's the application from the Otago Culture Trust and the staff responses from both Dr. Hazleton and myself.
So this is page 85, bottom of the page. So
My apologies, it's just while Dr Hazelton is in the room, if there was any clarification needed on the staff response to the submission from the Otago Sculpture Trust. It's on page 5. Right at the bottom. So we're not proposing a civic grant, we're proposing that seed money would need to be available to make the process happen.
So that would be dependent on whether council
That's right.
wanted to make it happen.
That's right.
Right?
Sorry, I said the process being the establishment of a trust modelled on the Wellington Trust to facilitate this sort of work.
We weren't anticipating it getting to that stage. We were anticipating using, working with the Otago Sculpture Trust on a specific project in the warehouse district to see if such a model might work.
Okay. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. I'm uneasy about committing to a sculptural model or any policy in advance of the formal notification and consultation around the city's arts and culture strategy. By approving this, we're essentially committing to that then being a part of the strategy that council haven't seen in the main, let alone our community. So I'm happy to move that this decision be deferred until after the arts and culture strategy has been developed.
Second, Councillor Wilson.
No, sorry, no, maybe want to ask a question, so please.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? I'll second. Seconded. Councillor Staines. One again. So that's, just to be clear, and it gives us a basis for discussion, the motion is that the decision on this, any pilot like this, be deferred until...
or considered as part of the development of our arts and culture strategy might be a better way of...
Yes, Councillor... Oh, do you want to speak to it?
No.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I think this is sensible, but I am a little concerned that a group of practitioners in the area a bit being rather put through the hoops, not through anything of our doing or their doing, but that's the way these processes work. And I just would like a confirmation from the staff involved, and I assume this will be the case, that the issues they've raised about a particular work and the issue that I asked the question about earlier about the proposal that has already been brought to us, several of us, about trying to get some sort of community involvement in a trust to fund public art, such as happens in Wellington, will be something that will be traversed with those parties, with this trust and any other relevant parties as part of the development of the arts and culture strategy. If it's all wound in there, then I'd feel comfortable about it, and I'd be more, I'd have more comfort with this group not feeling put upon and you know, going around the mouldy bush several times. Can I be sure that will be the case?
We can reassure that art and public places will certainly be part of the thinking behind the art and culture strategy. That particular piece might be the as a result of the art and culture strategy rather than specifically discussed as
That's fine, but this group will also be intimately involved in those discussions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Vance.
I keep hearing that we actually have some wonderful sculptors producing all sorts of amazing works. Having been in Laurie's yard at one point, I've seen some quite interesting stuff. But I'm really not sure, apart from anecdotal suggestions, that there really is a vibrant sort of sculptural output that would be producing things that might be suitable for this kind of pilot. Can you, either of you, Mr Hazelton or Rebecca, give us some idea of whether you think there really is the kind of standard of artwork that, for instance, you see in Wellington, able to come out of specifically Dunedin, rather than perhaps have some Christchurch or other northern artist producing a worm for us or whatever?
Just on the very initial work that's gone into the art and culture strategy, I personally have been amazed at the talent that I've seen in our community in terms of art and culture, and so I have no doubt that the talent lies within our city. However, that doesn't mean we should limit ourselves to our own, but I absolutely think that the talent, there is exceptional talent within Dunedin.
Right, thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson.
I don't know anything about art, so I'm qualified to speak. I do know something about community participation though, and it bothers me that for $10,000 we might be telling these people to go away for another year, and I don't really want to do that. And I don't see why, for me, putting small amounts of money into things that will generate potentially significant returns from community participation is where we need to be. And when we've got a community that wants to participate and we're worried about the 10,000, and I take it that, I know that's not your point, but I'll come to that, then it bothers me. I can't see that saying to this group of people, yeah, we hear your support and we'd like to recognise it and get something going, is any more dangerous to our arts and culture strategy than the fact that we already have an art gallery, we already have any number of other galleries. They're all factors that we're going to have to take into consideration. If encouraging one other group in the community for a very small sum of money has to be delayed for a year, I just don't think it's worth it for 10,000. I'd rather give them the 10,000 and deal with that in the same way as we're going to have to deal with every other arts and culture group that's already in existence in the city.
Councillor McTavish.
I just wanted to ask two questions of staff, if I may. The first is staff of the opinion that trialling something like this would help form an opinion or would help inform the development of the subsequent action plan that may fall out of the strategy?
We think it has the potential to.
So whether or not it works or not, it would still be potentially a valuable investment in...
and what elements worked and what elements would not.
And in terms of the $10,000 that is proposed, two questions around that. Firstly, would that be used by the trust or would that be used internally for the purposes of coordinating?
More the second.
Yeah, I think it's probably more towards the second, but I think we'd make those terms of reference about how that money was spent with the trust. That we need to get someone who's skilled in this area to help pull us both together and work us through this process of what it's going to be. Because I don't know that they've necessarily got those skills in-house either.
Yeah.
Because they are practitioners. So.
Yeah. And in terms of the proposal that came to us during annual plan, there was a smorgasbord of people that were suggested as being part of that process. Are staff confident that they could work with the trust to refine the potential range of stakeholders that need to be involved to make this successful and streamline the process that has been suggested?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. A couple of weeks ago we considered the council endorsed some additional funding for work in the warehouse precinct. Has any staff consideration been given to using part of that budget for this work?
We've ring-fenced 20,000 from our street tree and furniture budget from next year to go towards the actual construction of this installation, which was may only be seed funding towards that, but would be very much an idea of we'd expect them to go out and do that fundraising to get the rest of it. This probably relates back to your first question as well, which was around to do these trials. Would this work contribute to a trial that could be integrated within the arts and culture strategy? I know a few years ago there was the discussion around the integrating art into infrastructure. And that's what we've been trying to do through this warehouse precinct project. And I think what we've learned through that is that, I think people had bandied around figures of 1% and things like that, that they're actually just not realistic. And we've gone through a couple of false starts where we went out for the seats the first time and didn't really get what we needed, so we refined the process, went back out. So these things are a bit iterative, and there isn't one model that fits every part of it. So I think it is valuable to have these little case studies rather than saying in the strategy, this is what we're going to do, because that might just not work.
I was just speaking to the motion on the back of those responses, Your Worship. I won't be supporting this motion. I think that, as staff have articulated, there is real merit in trialling different approaches as you try to come to a final model. And I'm not sure that we have trialled a number of approaches over the last few years, and some have worked and some haven't. I think there is a risk of putting too much weight on one strategy development process to come to a perfect outcome. And I think we have an opportunity here to work with practitioners who are clearly really willing to do a piece of work which has already been identified in a planning process, and which already has buy-in from the community in terms of placement and need. So for all of those reasons, I think that this would be a neat and very small investment to get a potentially really helpful outcome, both in terms of knowledge around what works and what doesn't, and in terms of contributing to the warehouse precinct ongoing evolution. So I won't be supporting this, and if Councillor Thompson is foreshadowing another motion, then I will second it.
Well, I'm happy to foreshadow that if this were unsuccessful, I would simply move that we approve the 10,000.
Look, I think we need to clarify what the motion is. The original motion is read out, included the word deferring this pilot, and then the words that went up there seem to be saying let's do the pilot. So I think for the sake of all of us, we need to know what the motion is now. It's quite different now.
We've got it. We're just trying to put it towards the submission that we're talking about.
I don't know, look, I don't even think that makes sense. How can a decision be considered as part of the development? Either the pilot is or not.
Your Worship, there are two parts to this, aren't there?
No, look, it's been moved, and I want to know from the mover what exactly this means, because I think around the table we're talking about different things, and we have different understandings of it, and that's not going to help. So, thank you for moving.
Yeah, my intention was, and apologies for the lack of clarity, was that any pilot scheme be developed or come out of the arts and culture strategy rather than happen before that work is developed and notified, and that perhaps isn't expressed well there. But that is what that was the intent.
Can I suggest that the word decision should come out of the first line, because it's the seed funding for the pilot would be considered as part of the development of the arts and culture strategy.
Can I seek clarity around that, because I'm not sure that funding would be considered as part of strategy development. I think it would be probably considered as part of an action plan subsequent to the development of the strategy.
Yeah, I'm happy to withdraw it, and we can continue this.
I think we need to. I think it would be.
And we can have this discussion with Councillor Thompson's motion.
I'm happy to take another motion from you or from anybody, but that one was ambiguous. So it's been withdrawn. Can I ask a question? Certainly.
As this motion develops, similar to the arts and culture strategy, can I ask, from the comments I heard from staff a moment ago, I get the impression that they would support a pilot, as they originally recommended, of this kind. Can I have some comment on whether or not they would feel that does that in any way compromise the development of the strategy? Because I understand they feel that may be useful as part of the strategy development to do this.
Yes, we don't believe that it will compromise the art and culture strategy, and that's because as Councillor McTavish indicated, this is looking at a different way of doing things and testing whether it would or wouldn't work. And then the art and culture strategy could explore further different options, but this would inform that discussion.
Well, in that case, Mr Chairman, when Councillor Thompson moves his motion, I'll certainly be delighted to support it.
Well, I'm not sure whether I've got the words right, but I'll try it. Let me sound it out first.
Before you do, Councillor Wilson, you want
I'm just slightly, I think there's two things here, and I want to be really clear. We have already moved a motion, which I think the previous one was counter to, that if people want to put something in, then they want to fund it, then we need a mechanism to do that. So I think what we need is the Otago Sculpture Trust, if it is public art on streets, and we have people who want to put it, that we need to have a structure in place to do it. So that is, and they've offered to be that structure, so I welcome them as the group that may help us work out a mechanism to do that. Because tomorrow someone may come along with $150,000 artwork to go somewhere that we would absolutely love and we haven't got a mechanism. Now, the funding of any seed funding is a completely different issue and where that might go. So I think you need to have two quite clear...
Councillor,
yeah.
Is this a motion or is it a question?
Well, it is a... You talked to discussion and debate from everyone else until the... Yeah,
No, I know,
until
there was a
now.
motion on the table at that stage.
Okay.
It's not now.
Well, then when the question of the potential mover of the next one, so you did say I could talk, so I didn't say I was moving a motion.
Fair enough.
But I think we need to isolate the two parts out. So if we had a motion that said that we'd use the trust to do the work, should we need it, and then seed fund a project, then they're both separate items.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
That's what I was going to suggest, that Council approved $10,000 seed funding to the Otago Sculpture Trust to establish a pilot focused on the warehouse precinct.
Seed funding to be used in conjunction
Hang
with...
on, is there a second?
I'll second it if it says to be used in conjunction with the Otago Sculpture Trust.
Sorry, I missed that. I was sorting it now.
Right.
We're not offering them.
Could you bring that wording around to...
No, because I've got how Jimmy's relates to mine.
So we're not suggesting that we give the Otago Sculpture Trust $10,000. We're suggesting that it will cost $10,000 to figure out with the Otago Sculpture Trust how to work through this process and to get the...
Councillor McTavish has got a head round it and she understands art, so she should write it.
Councillor McTavish does not necessarily understand art. So the motion would read that council approve $10,000 to be used in conjunction with the Otago Sculpture Trust to establish a pilot focused on the Jetty Street underbridge, Jetty Street overbridge in the warehouse precinct.
Can you bring that round, Councillor?
Right. I think it's... The wording will go up in a moment, but it's reasonably clear, so I'll invite the speakers. Councillor Thompson, you may not have written it all, but you can speak to it. Sure.
If it doesn't involve painting with numbers, I'm in trouble. No, look, I mean, as I've said it already, I don't need to repeat it. I said it earlier in opposition to Aaron's.
Right. Councillor Hall.
None taken. I guess my concern with it originally as proposed was the term pilot, because that to me implies it's the beginning of an ongoing relationship, when what it seems to, is what I'm taking from staff comments is this is an experiment, for want of better words, for us to take information off to inform what may become a broader art and public places strategy, because as I mentioned in our conversation with the OST the other day, I think regardless of how broad sculpture is in 21st century contemporary art, there is more to public art than that, and I would hate for us to be limited to the fields that those trustees are working in. So I don't know how that can be resolved.
Perhaps a one-off trial rather than pilot?
I would be more comfortable with something that doesn't imply ongoing support of this model and this group. No, I mean, it's not. There's nothing against them or their work. I just a trial.
Trial. I'm changing pilot to trial.
Further speakers. Okay. I'll speak to this. I will support this, but I have considerable reservations. As I understand it, we have a policy in place at the moment where anything that we build around the city is meant to have some kind of urban design component. And we have been told that we don't have the resource to check that. So on the one hand, we don't have the resource to do the things that we've already said we're going to do, and on the other, we're putting 10,000 in to run a trial on something in the public arena. I'm uncomfortable about that. It seems to be round the wrong way. And given that we are being very careful about every $10,000, it seems to me a little bit previous to just fire $10,000 at something, and I don't understand how it can cost $10,000 to work out how to do something with a group of people and not actually produce anything. So I think I might have just about talked to myself out of supporting it. I may or may not, but I have reservations about this being in the wrong order. And indeed, it could be very easily seen as a group of a closed shop of practitioners looking out for a job for themselves and getting funded for it. And that's how it can look. So I think I've just persuaded myself not to support it. Any further speakers? Councillor Vance.
You've done the same for me, Your Worship.
Councillor Calvin.
I'm not supporting it for a slightly different reason. I just don't quite understand it.
Right.
Bishop, I just feel like I need to clarify that last point that you made, and I appreciate that you make some good points before you made that one.
You're too kind.
But they were very clear in what they brought to us, that they weren't focused on it being a project for them. They were very clear that it was something that they wished to open up to all potential practitioners, including those around the country, as I understood it, and that they wanted to involve a whole range of different, I thought almost excessive number of different people in the decision around what eventual artwork was going to be used, including people from everything from landscape design through to community. So I'm not sure that I'm confident that that last comment, albeit the rest of them were good, was not correct.
Further speakers? Councillor Thompson, do you want to?
No, I have no idea what to say.
All right, I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
I'll have a show of hands. I think it's lost, but I'll have a show of hands to be sure. Those in favour, please raise their hand. Those against? It's lost. Right. Councillors, we're going on to city property 45. Page 45.
So we'll just carry on with it.
Okay.
I had a suggested motion.
Welcome. 45, halfway down the second one from David Tucker's. Now, you had a...
I had a motion, but I'd like you all to turn to the first page of your annual plan, the section 1, because this is what I get slightly annoyed by. For those that haven't got it, that is what page 1 of our annual plan has. And I'd just like to point out that we don't have any property rights to this, yet we proudly show off the cathedral on our first page of our annual plan as if it were ours. But just to make that point...
Right.
This is the motion which I think will make... This is not the motion, sorry. I'm not going to try that one again. I think this next one is a good idea. I've run it past the CEO and I think she's happy with it. I haven't got the words here. I have, for the last 3 years, voted against us doing anything for these people, but I think this actually, I wouldn't want to open the Harrop Street toilets without having a CCTV camera looking down on that area in order, because I think it will be an unsafe area, and I think that we can kill two... I'm just taking the lead from Neville, actually. That we can assist these people at the same time as ensuring that our area is safe.
Is there a seconder, please? Yes. Are we clear what the motion is? It's been moved. I need a seconder.
I ask a question, Trish? Is there any possibility, we've already got CCTV in and around the Octagon and areas. I'm just wondering, is there a possibility that with some tweaking we could cover some parts of the cathedral? Is that a possibility? Just with rejigging what we're existing?
Well out of my comfort zone now talking about CCTV coverage of toilets. I'm not sure.
I'm glad of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're in a position to know what the cost of that is. Do we know? I'm not sure what the cost of that resolution would mean.
We had, didn't we, that was my question, was we had there was two sort of proposals with the cathedral, and it seems to me that only part of that, if we did the Herrick Street toilets, it wouldn't include the whole of what they were wanting with the cathedral.
No, that's covered in there, the ability to do that whole northern face of the St Paul's Cathedral at the same time. It was $10,000 if they did it. I'm absolutely sure it's going to be substantially cheaper for us to do it as part of the Herrick, but I wouldn't want us to open Lucy without it being covered.
Okay, we've got clarity on what it is, what we don't have is a seconder, so is anyone prepared to second it?
Well, I'm happy to second it for the purposes of debate.
Okay, so second to Councillor Tavish. Discussion, Councillor Carroll.
It's more a question, do we know what the additional costs are likely to be?
No. We can't advise you on that sitting here.
Councillor Vanders.
My understanding is that, and I have some sympathy for the cathedral in that regard, and that is that the only really good vantage point to put a camera that is going to look at the area that they're principally concerned about
is God.
Is getting fairly close, right up at the top of the town hall where we've just had that extension at the top there. There's a fantastic vantage point there where one camera with a fairly wide lens could cover the whole lot. And I'm concerned that it would cost 10 grand to do that and just run a link to the existing system. I would have thought you could have done it for two. But at a 10 grand level, I can't vote for it. At a 2 grand level, I would think, well, it would be churlish not to. So I'm sorry. Is there any way that we can perhaps defer it until we find out how much it's going to cost to stick one camera up on the town hall? Because it is the perfect vantage point to see that whole area above the rock wall where we park our cars.
The alternative is, given that we may not be able to find that information, the alternative is for the mover and seconder to include in this a limit on cost. That would be acceptable to council, and if it could be achieved for that, then council would know what the maximum we were.
Sure. Is the mover prepared to accept a limit of 2,000 or 3,000?
I'm happy with that. Yep. And I'm happy to be 2,000 because I think...
2.5 extra costs for the...
Okay, 2.5.
So you just need to...
Plus GST.
You just need to let Jenny know what we put that and how you'd express it. Councillor Thompson.
But look, I would support it if that was it gives the opportunity for the cathedral. It's going to cost a bit more than that for the cathedral to stump up with the balance, but it seems to me the critical thing is the ability for somebody to monitor it, and otherwise it's not much use. And I'm assuming that it can be linked back to wherever the ones that we currently have are for monitoring purposes.
Yes, the current Octagon cameras, as you know, are linked back to the New Zealand Police. So if the intention was to link it in with that, then it would have to be taken back to the Civic Centre.
And is that happen wirelessly or is it through cable?
I think it's through cable, but I'm not sure.
It is cable.
Yes. Further... Yes.
If I can just make a quick comment with regard to the picture appearing in the annual plan. It used to be that the annual plan contained purchased photographs from often foreign shores of happy children playing in palm-fronded beaches, which somehow was representative of Dunedin. We made a decision about 3 years ago that the annual plan would make a much more conscious effort to sell Dunedin as a destination. This year's theme is beautiful heritage buildings that mark our landscape, many of which we have contributed to or assisted in one way or another over the years. In previous years, we've had tourist attractions, things that we ourselves own and so on, but it's not meant to imply that we own it.
I know it's not owning it.
Right. Okay, now the word's been tweaked a little.
Being over.
I'm going to second it. No, fine.
Hang on, that's cost of no more than $2,500 capital cost to both the proposed toilet.
Oh, sorry, 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 hold on.
I think to cover.
To cover.
Both the proposed toilet and the northern face.
And the northern face. Just and get rid of and ability to cover.
Cost. It currently wants to be cost of no more than that amount to the council. It might cost more than that, but they could pick up the difference if they.
Oh, it's a long day. Can I suggest that it would be better to rearrange it so that the first sentence is that the staff proof installation of CCTV coverage, and then a second sentence which says to the cost to be no more than, because at the moment it's really
The cost of council to be known. It's adding up to more than that already.
Sure.
Can staff tell us about the status of this proposal to put toilets in Harriet Street and the location, and whether a suggestion of this kind is practical for covering both wherever they might be, plus the side of the cathedral, some distance above and further away?
The site for the proposed Harriet Street toilets is towards the southern end of Harriet Street, near where there's an existing seat and some trees.
Instead of or near? I know where the tree ring is in the wee corner of the car park.
Yes.
On that site or near there?
Adjacent to that, taking part of the car park site.
In back around the corner in the car park?
On the Harriet Street side.
Yes, immediately behind that, if you want to call it a pocket park or whatever it is, immediately behind there, taking in part of that paved area and part of the Harriet Street car park.
So it's not intruding on the current paved area or the tree or the seat?
No.
And is it practical therefore to locate a camera that provides some sort of security monitoring for that facility, and also include much higher elevation and further and distant observation of the wall of the cathedral with any meaningful clarity for the people who are watching whatever's going on?
I guess we'll find out.
Sorry.
I think you would be talking about a high quality camera suitable to be panned and zoomed. If you wanted to take in the face of the cathedral as well as Harriet Street as well as the proposed...
So you'll be reporting back to us in due course about the cost overruns, thanks.
Right, now it's... Right, so I'm taking the liberty of rearranging so that we know what each part is referring to. I trust that's okay with the movement second.
Yeah, I'm more than happy. Yeah.
So, are there any more speakers? Councillor Wilson, do it again. All right, I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No. And by vote recorded, please.
Councillor Wilson. Okay, is that one? Where are we now? We're on page 45, working down there. Page 46. With actually, there's only a couple on there. Well,
Because that looks like it's the end of city property.
Well, while we're on toilets, Mr Chairman,
while we're on...
There was a submission from Baldwin, about Baldwin Street, and is that being dealt with somewhere? Someone got on an agenda somewhere? There was a request for toilet.
It's on page 46.
Northeast, the top one, Jane Clutha. Yep. City property. My understanding that the only, and probably might be able to confirm this, but my understanding is that there's pretty much only one place that public toilets could go in the Baldwin Street area, and that is on the old post office site, in which case we would have to be either working with whoever the current owner is, and I think the current owner is the Community Trust, but I'm not sure about it. Councillor Hall, I think you might know.
At the present time, it's still privately owned, but they are negotiating to buy it.
Right. So what I'm just trying to ascertain is what are the choices if we do wish to facilitate toilet facilities in that area.
There was a previous site identified on the old quarry site, but after a lot of negotiation with the owner, that fell through at the 12th hour. So we're pretty well, I think, limited to the old post office site.
Okay. Councillor Calvert.
Is there any chance that the petrol station could be used? An arrangement be made with the Caltex?
I can't really comment on that, I'm sorry.
The bottom.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, it's getting too far away because your tourists are on buses. They come there, they can't, as it says in here, 3-minute drive from Baldwin Street. You can't hop on the bus and go down to the toilet at the gardens and back up to pick up the rest of the passengers. It has to be on the location. Caltex will be at least a 2-minute drive.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm perfectly happy with the response, but can we delete that last part which talks about a 3-minute drive from Baldwin Street as if that was the only means of getting there?
10-minute walk.
Well, I mean, it's not relevant. It's just that that's where they are.
Okay. So is everyone content with the response that's been given? It seems to be constructive. Things are moving on. Okay. That would appear to be the city property issues. Thank you.
Your Worship, the Friends of the Library raised the issue of potentially putting solar on the roof of civic buildings, particularly the library, and I just wondered that may be a corporate policy issue for consideration as part of the energy plan, but I imagine it also involves city property, and so I just thought I'd flag it now.
Has there been any consideration within city property about such a...
Not to my knowledge, no.
Councillor Dennis.
In terms of an invest to save potential, if you're going to put solar anywhere, you don't put it in a large building that already has 3-phase power going through it. If you want to put solar power anywhere, you put it in some remote location that has high line charges or has no power going to it at all. And currently, if you're going to do solar power within the city boundaries where power is readily available, you are still looking at not really investing to save currently. But certainly any of the outlying outfits that we have, solar has become much cheaper. The price of panels has dropped by 50% in the last year. I'm just putting a 3,000 watt system out at the farm and it's marvellous.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, that is property. Thank you. Are we going on to transportation planning? Page 125.
We would have done a lot. 124.
Welcome, Ron. Welcome, Jean. So we're on page 125, councillors. This is transportation planning. Anything from 125? 126. 127. 128. 129. Councillor McFadden.
Flagging up the issue that was raised by Spokes and Robert Thompson in terms of the appropriateness of the quiet streets approach. When we signed off the South Dunedin Cycle Network, part of the motion was acknowledging that a complete cycle network would include separated facilities on direct routes, but that the budget didn't extend to that. Is there, in the feedback that we have received to date on the South Dunedin facilities that have gone in, what has the general feedback been from users? And do we need to reconsider our approach in light of that feedback?
In Sarah's absence, I'll try and respond to that as much as appropriate. The general sense of things is that whilst there is some shortfalls in the quiet streets approach due to affordability, that it's still a very reasonable solution at this stage.
And should funding come available, we would consider putting direct routes or segregated facilities along direct routes to complement that.
I think it's a reasonable assessment, but there is obviously space constraints to consider as well when you're trying to overlay these cycle facilities in existing routes.
And as I understand it, we've got some potential fiscal constraints here in terms of delivering the program that's on our books as it currently is. So whether we've got any funds after that is another question, I suppose.
Right. On 130.
Sorry, I'm on 132.
You're way ahead of us. Just hold it there while the rest of us catch up. Right, you had something from 132.
My question was in relation to the Tunnels Trails Trust, and Council was, maybe I just need to talk with you about it afterwards, but I'm curious about whether there's anything that we could be doing to facilitate smooth way for the Trails Trust.
I've been talking to the CEO about an opportunity, or one of the things that may be holding it up. I'm happy to discuss later.
Mr. Chairman. Just a question in relation to the section, specifically in terms of the design issues around cycleway. Now, this is sort of Portobello particularly, but I'm not sure if this one was picked up, but there was one submission that talked about the desirability of including steps, harbour steps into the design around that work. Has that been noticed, or do we need to, in areas where boat access is required across the cycleway as part of the design work for Portobello, was that picked up by someone? I just want to know that it had been noticed, because there are areas in the sorry, it's not quite the right place, but I don't want to miss it, because it's really important. As part of the design of the wall, there would be places where it would be highly desirable to incorporate steps so people can carry a kayak or whatever, or access the water.
Just quickly through the chair, yes, we've picked up on all of those issues during initial consultation, and there were one or two during annual plans.
The other one was a more specific one about the number of submissions we've got about the priority that a lot of people attribute to the completion of the work on the other side of the harbour, the Port Chalmers connection. Have we we haven't had any wider policy discussion yet about that. Are we planning to do that at some point in terms of the collective?
My understanding is we've had positive feedback from NZTA with regard to what funding pool there would be, and that there is money in it. But my understanding is that now they're prioritising the design work necessary before we grab the money. Is that right?
Yes, obviously the Walk on the Other Side is all an NZTA project. We've encouraged them to get on with it. They were in the media recently about their plans and the difficulties they've got in terms of design and extending, reclaiming some of the side of the railway line. So we're continuing to encourage them, impress upon them the need to do the work. So.
Councillor Thompson.
Just in that regard, I understand that one of the things that makes it difficult to complete it, even if we could push the button tomorrow in any quick time, is in fact the railway line realignment and the fact that the land's got to settle long enough before you can put the rails on. But is there any possibility that the land that the rails are going to shift to could be used as a temporary continuation of that rail track, which might even help it to, not rail track, sorry, cycle walkway, so that if you were able to do, up to either end of it, you might potentially have a, albeit less than perfect, link for while that's happening?
I don't think any council staff have got into those sorts of details. It has some merit. There'll be some issues around crossing the railway line once or twice.
I think it's part of the NZTA working through that. As I understand it, though, they need to provide a reclamation to move the railway line physically over so that the walkway comes down one continuous side. So potentially they'd have to cross over for the reclaim, go across and then cross back, as I understand, but I could be wrong.
Councillor McTaggart.
Just in reference, I think that the comment in response to this is a little bit confusing for...
Which one?
In response, the generic response that's going to everyone that comments on the State Highway 88 shared path, in the sense that it still doesn't give a clear steer to submitters that actually it's NZTA who are responsible for this project, and our role is effectively a lobbying role. It seems to place us both in the camp of being responsible for, and I just think that's an unfortunate message to be given that we have so little control. So I would support the comment being revised to make that quite clear.
Councillor Hall.
My understanding, the only reclamation is between Sawyers Bay and Port Chalmers. Is there any reason why NZTA couldn't get it formed down to Sawyers Bay at the present time? Do it in 2 stages rather than 1?
I'm not sure we're familiar enough with where NZTA are at in terms of their seeking funds for the design work and other things. We have encouraged them to make progress. It's really with the NZTA at the moment, but there has been some recent movement, and there was a recent email which I can't recall the details of about their proposed timing. But they're seeking funds for the design work and the physical construction and trying to move it along.
133. 134. 134, 130. Councillor McTaggart.
135?
Yep.
Hang on, I think oh, sorry, Your Worship. I put it here because it pertains to cycleways and lighting, but it's not listed within this section. So it's from John Burke, submission 101074, and he raised the issue of lighting along cycleways and the fact that there are many alternatives now, including LEDs outwards, and so I think it was either him or another constituent that flagged the luminescent things that they can put into the cycle. So I would like us to be considering those options in relation to design, and I thought his submission was a good example of that, but just seeking reassurance from staff that will be considered.
Yes, certainly street lighting. As you mostly will be aware, that there is a desire to implement LEDs, and we're going through a business case approach to implement that, and staff such as Peter Standering are being investigating options around those things, and that would include on cycleways as well.
Yeah, I think what he was saying is it reduces the need for street lighting if cycleways can be lit in alternative and more innovative ways, using luminescent beads or these Yeah.
Used to have a light on the front of my day.
We are very aware of those alternatives.
Right. 135, Councillor Wilson?
No, 37, sorry.
Right.
36? I got one on 37.
Councillor Wiley, 136?
This may come as a surprise from many councillors. Blue Skin Resilient Communities, Scott Willis, made a comment which I thought was quite relevant or could be one to take up, was it was $1,200 for a car recharging point. And he suggested that the Dunedin City Council could investigate that and maybe 2 or 3 points around the city.
This garage, my garage, your garage.
Energy plan? Just suggesting it be forwarded to the energy plan for consideration.
Okay, Councillor Fixenberg.
Mr Chairman, I've that exact issue already on the agenda for the Planning and Regulatory Committee. In fact, we'll be discussing that next week at our agenda meeting. One of the particular concerns I have is not only the investigation of the potential for some charging points around town, but also some work to try and encourage a standardisation of the connection mechanisms. I noticed in a TV program about how wonderful electric cars were the other day. There were 3 models and 3 different plugs. So there are some practical issues that we do need to address. So that's in hand, I'm pleased to say, I think, and we'll be coming back to council shortly. The other part of that is the other submission that we received about suggesting the city lead the way with a fleet of electric vehicles. And I think we need to have some feedback to be a city fleet in due course on that issue, please.
Well, can I suggest that we bring that up through the committee system?
Happily.
Because I won't. Happy with that, Councillor Wiley? 137. Councillor Lord?
No, sorry, 138.
Right.
137.
137, Councillor Wilson.
It's Alison Sipthorpe. She's talking about the St Clair car park, and I think it was also Conrad Stedman talked about that car park. In light of an email that we've received from staff this week that potentially losing 29 car parks on Victoria Street, I thought the response was possibly, it could be saying that it may be considered in light of other roading changes out there, because I would hope that we haven't discounted that as an option to, if it's needed, if we are taking out potentially 29 car parks in Victoria Road.
Yes, they are obviously in the same geographical area, so there would need to be consideration of this proposal.
Thank you.
Councillor Lord, 138, was it?
Yeah, Harold Fennell. It seems like a long time ago that he spoke to us, but it was only last Thursday, and I just wondered if there was some way, in view of his lovely submission, and being such a wonderful old chap, that out of the Mayor's discretionary fund you would find enough money to put a sign outside his gate and give him a parking certificate for free. I don't know if that's a possibility. It doesn't need a lot of debate, but...
Can I suggest we refer that to the parking department? They'll have some criteria around those.
Yeah.
And they will perhaps come back with
the only little possible.
Look, I wanted to comment on the same thing. It seems to me that there probably ought to be a point at which you've paid your fair share, and I think that was really the heart of what he was saying. It wasn't that his age warranted it, or that he had some right because he lived there. It was the fact that he had been paying it for so long that really it was hard to justify what it was we were charging him for after all this time. And I think that should be looked at in terms of really, frankly.
Well, that could be looked at, that could be taken through the park. Someone raised the issue of the St Clair. Councillor Wilson, you raised the issue of the St Clair parking. Is the Conrad Stedman submission in this area? I think that we're going to be talking about that.
No, we did that under pedestrianisation. I haven't seen it in here, but it was a pedestrianisation one of the Esplanade with a car park solution. So I think it will. The response will be the same, but I don't know where it is in here. It's just about tweaking the response.
So you're saying it's another one by Stedman?
Yeah, Conrad
Around the-
Stedman.
Around the same thing?
Yeah. I gave the details to Transport staff last week.
All right. So 139.
Mr Chairman, the Andersons, the Victorian precinct on the highway, we will all recall the presentation. I just want to be assured that such considerations will be part of the ongoing considerations about the alignment of the highways.
He asked for $50,000.
Yeah. I emailed staff with a question. I emailed Sarah with a question about this project, and I can forward you her response, which was something to the effect of, it's unlikely that NZTA would subsidise such a project, therefore council would need to fund it completely itself should it be seen to be a priority.
Thank you. That wasn't quite my question. It was just that, I mean, in light of the ongoing issues we have about the brave new world of investment mapping and the hoops we discussed recently, I just want to be assured that as discussions continue, as they have for decades, about the alignment of our highways, that suggestions like this from Mr Anderson, given the magnificent buildings in the area and the other issue in terms of the prison that was also raised during submissions, remain very, very firmly on the table as potential development.
Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Just noting that the very comprehensive bus project thing also mentioned something about one-way streets, two-way streets, one-way streets turning into two-way streets and things. I think that should feed back into whatever thoughts are happening, because the comment they made was that it was relevant to where the buses might or might not go if you're looking at any of those things. So since a lot of the point of us taking the buses would be to provide synergies between everything we do and things, we should at least listen to that and think whether that's fed into there.
Yes, all those things will be taken into consideration in terms of our city centre upgrade program that we're working through the business case, and certainly as things evolve in terms of our responsibilities, and those things will come into that thinking as well.
140. Short public transport. On the bottom of page 141 there's road closure. It changes from public transport to road closure, road safety on page 142. Councillor McCabe.
My question is in relation to, well, maybe I'm not raising this in the right place, but Steve Walker's submission in relation to the 30 kph trial.
Its own section.
Oh, it's got its own section. Thank you.
Do you want to deal with it? Ron, you're sitting there to deal with it now, so if I can read it.
What section are we doing?
Well, the speed limit's about 4 pages on, that's all.
Oh, right. Well, let's just hold. We'll get there. We'll just might as well just go through these pages. 143, 144, 145. Your Worship. Yeah, Councillor, 145. 145.
Just general maintenance has been raised in a number of submissions, and it seems to be an annual issue, and it pops up through community boards. We hear from Strathtyre, we hear from Chalmers, and various other concerned parties throughout the city. And I don't know what the solution is, but over time we started off with a contract, and I'm talking generally here with the main contract for maintenance for the carriageway in general, which pretty much covers everything, you know, from the one side to the other, whether it's maintaining footpaths, carriageway, road markings, etc. But we started off with performance-based contracts about 10 or 12 years ago, and Western Bay of Plenty were the sort of the model for the country to follow. And it was, you know, going to be the bee's knees and all the rest of it. And I'm not totally convinced that we've got the right model. Either that, or we're not getting what we're asking for. And, you know, I know Lee and I, you know, we had those discussions with Horton Hogan, who are the current contract, about mud tank cleaning. And, you know, there was a response at the time, and I think that, you know, the contractor did lift his game. But there still seems to be areas of the city that lack basic maintenance. And I don't know what the solution is, because if you've got performance-based contracts, in theory, if the contractor's not doing their job, they're hitting the pocket. And that generally makes, you know, whether it's a contractor or whoever, sit up if it's hitting them in the pocket. And I don't know whether staff want to comment about how well they either perceive or feel that those contracts are working. And to be fair, it's not really an annual plan issue, but the reality is that we've got these 5-year contracts in place. We receive submissions on an annual basis about the tidiness or the effectiveness of contractors. So I'd be interested just to hear from staff what they believe is, or you know, how well those contracts are tracking at this point in time.
Right. Can I just contextualise that a little? You're absolutely right. This is an assertion that's been brought up by community board chairs, by all sorts of people, and I, at one of the community board chairs meetings, we noted it, and the chief and Mr Avery committed to looking at the basic question as to whether levels of service have dropped or have been allowed to drop, particularly in the outer areas. So that's the context. So Mr Avery, you could perhaps...
I'll hand across to Peter, because he manages those road maintenance contracts for us.
As far as the question of whether the actual standards have dropped, basically we have the same performance measures requested in the actual contracts that we have at the moment, and we see the same auditing measures as we have had for the last 10 years. So all I can say that we are actually sort of monitoring the level of service that we're actually receiving from the contractor, and any sort of drop on that we do respond. You know, look, I'm not denying what people think they're actually seeing there, sort of thing, but we have a standard approach to our auditing that's actually been, as they lasted over the last 10 years. We've actually seen no significant drop-off in certain areas with the grading and bits and pieces, as much as people see specific areas. Generally, sort of thing, that sort of aspect is actually sort of increasing, and we're getting a better level of service. But at the end of the day, we are asking the level of service. If people's expectations are actually sort of growing, we've actually maybe have to sit down and actually readjust our levels of service that we're actually requesting.
Thank you. A couple of additional comments. I'll give an example, and sometimes when you exhaust all avenues, you take the law into your own hands. And one example historically that I used was that instead of going through the CSA, I went direct to Horton Hogan, which Barry Williams does all the time, and he does, I think, quite effectively. So that's sometimes, you know, you get frustrated and you try and look for alternatives. So that's just one example. And I'd also have to say that in general meetings now that I go to, I hear more about this issue than the stadium. You know, the stadium doesn't pop up as regularly now as it used to. This is the hot topic that I hear on a regular basis. And I was at a meeting to do with police staffing in Port Chalmers, when was that, a couple of days ago, and it popped up there at the end of the meeting. There was a couple of residents just talked about maintenance in general, and I look at what's happening on the state highway, and I think that NZTA get a better performance out of their contractor, and forget about who it is, but their contractor on their highway network than we do on our roading network. And that may be just a perception, but I don't see the same things being missed in the highway network as that's occurring on our local network. But I just wanted to share that with the rest of the team.
I want to put it in context here I'm not sure that staff can express it this way, but it's a matter of whether the repeated complaints actually reflect any change at all, or whether it just reflects, as Peter has said, a rise in expectation Now, I don't know the answer, but I'm just saying it, just because more people are complaining about it doesn't mean something's changed, except their expectation.
I think they're complaining that things aren't being done. It's not the standard that they're being done, they aren't being done. Peter.
Certainly, Fu. Look, you're talking about the complaints. I think we actually track very well through CSA the complaints that we're getting, and on a number of issues that we have around regional networks. I think there's a lot of them that actually aren't being brought up. We're actually having a drop-off on things that are being reported, or people actually sort of taking issues to us through CSA. So we're not seeing a marked increase in complaints issues.
Mr. Standring has said that they've had the same standards for the last 10 years and that, quote, we are monitoring, and I don't deny that either of those things is true. But we have got a situation where, although these things may be monitored, there has been no effective action. For instance, 2 years ago when Fulton Hogan's sucker truck for mud tanks was in Christchurch for a year, none of the tanks got done. And the only staff response that I was able to get was that they reduced the $150,000 contract by 10% for non-performance, or for lack of performance. In fact, it was a complete non-performance. Whatever monitoring was done certainly didn't go to the next stage of actually making sure that something was done. And when, as a result of my complaints, they got a sucker truck up from Invercargill to clean the mud tanks, they started at 47 Garfield Avenue, right outside my front gate. And I had quite an interesting chat with the blokes who were doing the job, who said they hated doing it up here because the mud tanks were routinely not done here to the extent that they had to get a crowbar to chip the stuff out of the bottom of these mud tanks because it had been there so long, and that the performance standards here were the worst in the South Island. They travel the whole South Island, they're based in Invercargill, and that they've never been done properly, and that they only get to do them in certain places. They don't do the whole lot ever. Now, apparently one of the reasons is that there's a shortage of funds, and that the contract was pretty cheap, and therefore they just do the ones that are a real problem. But the fact is that we are also spending an enormous amount of money, and I think out of the previous water manager told me we spent $300,000 getting the kind of gunge that should be trapped in the mud tanks, getting it out of the main sewer and stormwaters, because it wasn't being caught where it should. So I'm not disputing, Mr. Standring, that we are monitoring, but what I am disputing is that the result we're getting and the feedback to contractors to get a better result seems 2 years down the track, still not to have vastly improved. The last big rainfall when I came down from Hillary Street, visiting my friend Calvin Oaten, every single drain on the way from his place down to the flat was a mini lake. It wasn't just coping, and this was after the big flood event that we'd had.
Can I ask the Chief to respond, because you have raised this before?
I have. I've been at this for years, and it's
and it's been responded to before, so can I let the Chief respond once?
Look, I think emails have been sent around, and Fulton Hogan have been asked, and our team are monitoring their mud trap emptying processes. They're actually running slightly ahead of their KPI requirement for the number that they're doing, whereabouts, how often, and their repetition rate. And we've taken Councillor Vandervis's concerns seriously, to the point that the governance manager, Ms Graham, has been out doing personal testing with the staff of the mud traps in order to investigate whether or not the emptying of them is mythical or real. The issue is they fill up and they overflow for a number of reasons that do not necessarily mean they haven't been, the bottoms haven't been sucked out. So the staff can provide you, there's now a log. I've met myself with the principals who are in charge of this work. There's now a log that is kept of when each one is emptied, how often, and what the rotation is that we can provide you with again.
Thank you. Councillor Kelp.
I know there's some things that are very secret, but in general, is it possible that we could have the ratepayers knowing what the KPIs are and in some senses. If, for instance, a strip was being mowed once every fortnight or whatever, is there anything wrong with people out there knowing what KPIs are expected, because then their expectations can better meet our expectations of the contractor, and if they're failing, then that they can get back to us only in things that it's reasonable for them to have expected.
Generally, there's no issue with releasing that information in terms of what the level of service expectations are. A number of them are at a very high level in the annual plan, and a number of other ones are included in our operational or asset management plans. And likewise, Peter's team in his area does a lot of the auditing checks, so that information can be made available.
That would get the expectations to meet practice.
Potentially could help manage that.
I think the problem I've got now is road maintenance and everything has been going on for years. We go back 20 years, we used to have areas in the city with separate contracts, and therefore different contractors were always competing on a better, to do a better job. The council were able to compare one contractor to the other to make sure they kept up with standards. And since we've gone to one contractor for the whole city, I think our standards have slowly slipped back and back and back over the whole of the city area.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm going to be the cars that we drive these days are, as someone who has had the bottom of her car taken out twice, because they're softer than, and what ties them to the bottom of the car, the protector, is not necessarily as well built as they were 20 years ago. I have some sympathy that some of the complaints are perhaps more a statement of the car quality that we have these days rather than the road. Having said that, it is perhaps that we need to design our roads and consider our roads for the cars that are driving on them. I know in Strathtyre that I avoid gravel roads now in a smaller car than I did in an SUV, and that the postie for years only had a car but now has to drive a truck. So those sort of anecdotal messages may be about car type and the quality thereof, but it does mean that you need to reconsider potentially uplifting the standards for the type of car that is driving on them, because otherwise it is a service level drop.
Now, when it comes to Councillor Lord, can I remind councillors that, and when Councillor Noon raised the subject, that's fine, it's about the commentary back, but some of the discussion now is not relevant to the budget for the next year that we're talking about. So let's stick to that, please, or we'll be here all night. Councillor Lord.
I should perhaps put my microphone up. I was going to just say, though...
One or the other.
Okay, I will say, because it won't get said otherwise. I wonder if one of the problems we have in our community is the expectation that everything should be just picked up. I'm very conscious when I look around, I see plastic bottles and cans and stuff in gutters, but at the end of the day it doesn't get there by itself. And I wonder if we need to have a serious crack at trying to tell the community about littering.
Thank you. Stay. Right, moving on, 145.
147.
147, yes, Councillor.
Speed limit, Port Chalmers. I appreciate that this may simply be picked up through the relevant committee. I'm not sure which one that is, whether it's planning or transportation, infrastructure, services. So maybe the chair could just, if that's the case, then we can leave that and that can happen. But it does strike me that we either need to hear from NZTA about what their processes are and why it needs a second trial, or we need to request that we endorse the concept and we move on.
Well, can I, two things. I think this needs, if we're going to do anything about this, this needs a motion and we'd say, but, before you, it may not need it here. I think that can be brought to a standing committee. I think you're absolutely right. We need to be passing over and saying in NZTA, how come it takes you 2 years to change the sign? That's effectively what you were saying.
Well, no, I think it is a budget one. I was going to move that we put 2,500 aside from now whichever budget, the safety budget or minor safety works budget for this as a contribution to another trial for the summer season. Because if NZTA don't do it, we need to have a budget in there to do it ourselves. And that the rest of it can be picked up by the Chalmers Community Board.
Well, if you want to move that, that's fine. I would have thought that if there was a will to do it, it could be found.
Well, and that's with the right if necessary. I mean, there's going to be ongoing conversations, but the problem is if NZTA don't do it, we've only got one line. I'll move that.
Is there a second?
Just before you take the motion, can I just make a comment? NZTA will not initiate it. It was initiated by the Community Board in conjunction with Road Safety Department, DCC, by Ron. So I don't think you can expect that NZTA are all of a sudden going to wave a wand and say we'll drop the speed down to 30k. They're not going to do that. So the reality is the ball's in our court. If we want to have another trial, we've got to drive that. If we want to encourage NZTA to drop the speed to 30k's, we will have to work our way through that process to achieve that.
And this gives us time to do that process and have a speed limit in place for the next summer, which is why I'm doing it.
I'm not arguing against that.
But we need to do it. But this is the financial part of that.
I'm not arguing against that. Just remember how it was funded last time. It was funded by contribution from the Community Board and Transops reprioritised and essentially some money didn't get spent elsewhere in the Chalmers Ward. So the funding was found.
I was going to say for existing budget, but then it doesn't need us.
Right.
That can be done later, can't it?
Look, I'm assured by the Chief that this can be done from the existing budget. It's the initiation of another trial that's required. Councillor Benson.
Just a question on that. Why do we have to have another trial?
The discussion was if we can't persuade NZTA to do it in time for summer, Councillor Wilson's wanting to be sure that the speed limits will be lower again through summer, and a second trial is a way of ensuring that. If we're talking about $2,500, what I said to the Mayor is we'll have a look at the minor safety works budget and see what we can do. But hang on, stop. I might have misrepresented.
Your Worship, look, I just want to save $2,500 because look, at the end of the day, the board have already talked about how they're going to ensure that the speed limit is 30k from the 21st of December to the 28th of February next year. They've already got that in train. I don't think we need to throw any money at them. We can work with them. That's my view.
Happy with that. Councillor Van Diemen needs to
Picking up on Councillor Benson Pope's statement, why do we need a second trial? There's got to be a statute of limitations on the number of trials you have. If the first trial is entirely successful, and it has been, and we've had even the submitter from the New World supermarket there has submitted to say, look, this 30k is what we really need. It's desperately unsafe for our supply trucks to be turning into the New World with a 50k limit, and that 30k sign needs to be at the bottom of Wycliffe Street. Why is it that we have a situation where we've had a trial, it's been totally successful, everybody's agreed, the port, the New World supermarket, all the people there, it's something we all want. Why is it that we have a system whereby we just can't get it?
The answer is we don't control it, but I think everyone around the table is asking the same question. The Chief has assured us that that it can be any resource that we need to put into it to facilitate getting it forward is there, and the will is there to help the Community Board to get.
Given that it's a universal will here, do we need to publicly embarrass the NZTA into simply doing it?
Well, we may, but not. It's not for.
It might upset other.
Probably, just on that, probably not an answer to that last question, given we've got a hand in their, hopefully very deeply in their pockets on other issues. But I would say that I can't imagine there can be too much cost to this. There must be a set of appropriate signs already somewhere if we've had a trial. And why don't we make it a 10-year trial so that there's no future embarrassment?
Page 147.
153.
Yeah.
153.
153 we've got up to. Here we go. Here's the back to street cleaning. 154. And that is the end of transportation on 154.
Can we just commit area now to his here? Page 114, just finish it, 114. Parks and Rec.
Right, thank you. Ron, Jean, what's next? Parks and Rec, we'll finish Mick off.
Well on the way.
Please. And page
114.
114, page 114.
Just got to finish from the other day.
Yeah. So we're on page 114, and then we move over to 115.
So 114.
Yeah.
The reserve staff, there was an offer from Maria Sutherland, who does some wonderful stuff, to assist possibly closures of parks and everything. Will that be followed up, that offer? Did you hear that offer? Sutherland from community, combined community patrols? If you're not familiar with the submission, I'll give it to you. I did it.
No, I'm sorry, I apologise, I was just trying to
Yeah.
get the right page.
Mick, you Mike. Mike.
It's just a general.
Oh, sorry. So I apologise, I wasn't at the right page. I don't need the submission.
So please, with us now, so
Yeah.
The point is, will someone follow up with her the offer that she made in her oral presentation or submission to assist on some of those things that they find as issues, finding parks unlocked when they should be locked and not knowing what to do. I mean, she made an offer that they could be assist with some of those things in a more proactive manner. And I'm not sure that you were there when she submitted.
No, I wasn't, unfortunately. I
Is that-
but I understand perfectly the situation. I thought I did. My understanding is that the advice is, and we're happy to work with anybody who's going to provide us with information we don't have, but ringing the customer services agency and advising of non-performance in this area is the most effective way to deal with this.
I think she offered more than that.
Well, that's
And I think next
in that
discussion
case,
will be followed up.
that's excellent.
She offered to lock them, I'm not.
If I can, whilst that seems very generous, there have been issues in terms of health and safety and other issues in the past, but we'll happily follow that up.
Thank you.
115.
Sorry, 115. I'm sorry. Can we just note the resolution that Councillor McTavish put up for Claire Roxburgh, who's talking about seats in this area. I can't recall the area, but if people want to, that they can contribute towards those, please. Just extending that response to reflect that.
I think we'll have to review a few of the responses in light of some of the resolutions passed.
Thank you.
116. 117.
I think it's already been noted by staff. Just Peter Dowden's. Can we please remove the last paragraph?
Which one?
Peter Dowden. Sorry, the last sentence.
Oh, yeah.
Page 117. Well, unless the staff have a problem with that being removed and want to explain it.
If I may, through the Chair, the only reason that's there against some of the other submissions that you've seen is because this particular submitter identified that specifically.
He didn't want it closed. It was clear about that at his submission. That wasn't what he was asking for.
So can I be clear?
He didn't preclude it.
He just said it wasn't his decision.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily the result he was looking for.
If I could be clear, Your Worship, he didn't want what closed?
The pipe.
He may not want it closed, but it is identifying a hazard, and I think we have an obligation to make some response in that respect.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying he wanted it closed. I don't think he did actually. No. Councillor Thomas.
Well, look, there's probably 1,000 trees that people could climb up and fall out of in the same area, and we're not going to chop them all down because there's an opportunity to do so. I'm right with Councillor Wilson on this. Just because one person points out that he could fall off a pipe doesn't mean we have to go and put barbed wire across the front of it to stop everybody else from going across it. I just wish we wouldn't.
Councillor Staines.
My understanding was that someone did fall off that pipe and that it was only because someone else was there to get them out of the water that there wasn't perhaps a more serious outcome. So under the Health and Safety Act, I would say there has been an accident, it is a hazard. I don't think now that we know about it, we have any choice but do something about it. Otherwise, we will be legally liable.
Well, that's exactly what my point was this afternoon.
Can I just suggest that staff review the legality of that, because we can't protect ourselves against other people's foolishness or clumsiness if they choose to exercise it.
If I can through the chair, I mean, we're happy to remove the sentence, but we will follow this up.
Yeah. Councillor.
Under health and safety, it has to be addressed now. It's been brought to the public attention. It has to be addressed.
So, I repeat, I think the staff need to check the legality of that, because it would end up, as Councillor Thompson said, do we put a barbed wire fence around every tree that some fool wants to climb up and pull out? That doesn't put a legal obligation on us, and I don't see why any other structure, if people use it the wrong way, should put any legal obligation on us either. But I'd like staff.
Given the recent changes to health and safety legislation, it might be really good if I might go to jail. I'd be keen to ensure that doesn't happen. I'm keen to make sure no one does get injured realistically. So let's get our health and safety experts to have a look. The new health and safety guy has got a very good reputation for being very sensible, but at the same time sticks to the law, but he's pragmatic, and he's not one prone to going ludicrously overboard. So let's get him on board and take advice.
Councillor Wilson.
As long as a solution is looked at, not necessarily to close it, but to make it safer for crossing, because that may be as cheap an option. And that's all and working with the community people who volunteered to help in that regard, or potentially could help in that regard. There were a whole lot of submitters who wanted it made an access way. But I just don't
build
want
it as a boardwalk or
Yes.
something.
We have to be careful about, if it hasn't been identified, if we're going to provide for some crossing, that it actually doesn't create, therefore, a hazard in itself. We're going to have very fraught difficulties. That's the issue we've got.
Can I just suggest that unless councillors want to move that we put some funding in to do something, then this isn't actually relevant to the plan. Councillor McCabe.
Your Worship, I wonder whether we should refer health and safety policy issues to our newly created audit and risk.
I vote for that.
because I'm serious about that for two reasons. Firstly, I think that there is potential liability issues, but on the other hand, there is very real risk of bureaucratic overload in relation to the way that we manage our parks and reserves, and I think that there's a balance which needs to be met there, and I think that there is a governance issue in terms of getting our head around that, and I think audit and risk is probably where that would sit.
Okay. Grant.
It is in terms of reference, unfortunately for those people who are I am very aware of that.
Right, 118.
We're now into reg service.
That's Parks and Rec done?
That's Parks and Rec, by the look of it. Thank you, Mick. Thank you, Liz.
Yes,
So we're going into corporate.
Page 47.
47, councillors. Right, just before we get to corporate policy. There's one here on civil defence. Order, please. One here on civil defence on page 46. The Chief's going to deal with that in the absence of civil.
If you've got any issues, it's just with Sandy away.
Good questions on that, right. We're on to corporate policy. Page 46, page 47.
46.
Yep.
Re the DPA. I have a motion drafted that will appear very soon.
Right, there's the a motion on the board. Was there a second for that?
I'll second for the purpose of debate.
Right. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Hawkins?
I do. This is part of, and I realise that this accessibility of communication and consultation is broader than the specific thing, but I thought for the purposes of responding to the DPA submission, I would make it this narrow. And as Councillor Benson Pope has pointed out under his breath, there are language issues too, and I would love them to be included in subsequent work. But bearing in mind that I think we took a very Council took a very positive step last term in filming and broadcasting our meetings. This is of little use to those who can't hear them. At present, we don't have any options around transcription or closed captioning of those. The DPA submission refers specifically to NZSL interpreters, given that New Zealand Sign Language is one of our 3 official languages and should be acknowledged as such. I'm aware that there are degrees of expense related to these issues, but some of them are far easier to do than others, be it recording audio of our consultation pamphlets right through to writing our forms in Braille. I don't know what these options are. I don't know what these options would cost, but I would like a piece of work done so that we can compare those and try and find room within, ideally within existing budgets or not, to implement them over the next however long.
Councillor Benson Pope.
I think this is highly desirable. I also know that it's potentially extremely expensive, especially when it comes to translation and transcription services. But I would just ask that the report, should Council agree to this, includes, takes into account the capacity currently provided by the Foundation for the Blind to use volunteer readers to provide a service for the unsighted. And that's a really good service that reads the newspaper, reads letters to the editor even. And obviously we'll pick up quite a lot of DCC news as part of that. It may well be that association would be more than happy to extend its source of volunteers or plug in DCC media section for the sort of material that might quite easily be made available to people who use that anyway. So that might cover part of that. I'd just like to make sure that people are aware of that.
Further speak. Councillor.
It's just a question, and that's of staff. Would some form of this be able to be incorporated into the existing communications work which you guys are doing in terms of revising how we consult and engage?
Yes. You can just say yes, Ginty.
Yeah. in that context, is this resolution required, or is it going to happen anyway in relation to the work, in the context of the work that you're already doing?
Well, yeah, as Councillor Vincent Pope suggested, it is expensive. It could have budget implications. So in the report, we'd have to look at what those costs would be.
Yes, but that's what the report's for, Graham, is to tell the councillors what those budget implications would be.
So yes, I think the report would be worthwhile.
I just want to say I'm already working with Sean May on some aspects of this. Possibly I haven't had a conversation with Graham about it yet.
This is around what we can do on the web, so we'll include that detail in the report, Jane.
I've been alerted to the potential desirability to include the Disability Issues Advisory Group in that chain, and I'm happy to insert that after and other community groups, comma, through the Disability Issues Advisory Group, comma, report back to.
All right, any further discussion?
No.
I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. 47.
Mr Chairman.
Councillor Benson Pope.
3 submissions on that page refer to the TPPA, and I share the concern of the submitters about the potential effects on our freedom of decision making and our autonomy, not just New Zealand's but the city councils and that of local business actually, should some of the possibilities associated with this long-running negotiation transpire. So I think the most appropriate thing would be to request a report, to a committee so that council can consider this at greater depth.
So do you want to
and I'll also move.
You'll move. Is there a seconder for that, Councillor Maria?
Yeah, just to say that on our local government listserv today, there was a response because Horizons Regional Council had sort of asked of the government what was going on with the TPPA, and they've responded to say that although the negotiations are secret at the moment, that the whole agreement would have to go through the parliamentary process, at which point the public would be able to have their say.
The problem with, if I may, Mr Chairman, the problem with that is it's likely to go through the parliamentary process retrospectively, and there has been a suggestion for a long time that it would go to Parliament for approval, but after it had been formally signed. And the potential for cancellation is also problematic because it may not exist. So while I can understand that was indeed like the likely government response, that actually increases rather than reduces my concern.
Right. So it's been moved. Councillor Benson Pope, second to Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Hawkins, you wish to speak.
No, just that I think that, as Councillor Benson Pope has said, these concerns are very valid and have a potentially direct impact on everything from procurement to public health policy, to our detriment, one might cynically suggest, and just that, even though it will potentially go through Parliament, my understanding is that it will be a yes/no ratification rather than an option to alter that text in any kind of meaningful way. So I welcome this report.
Councillor Wilson.
It was a question after that, and I haven't seen the response or the material, but just wondering that in light of other information we've had this week, that the likely response or process may well be that we're given 2 weeks' notice and asked to read a document that we know nothing about until it's available, maybe at that time or not, and to respond collectively, albeit we may not have any meetings because it might be over Christmas, and that would be rather hard process to. So the question is, did you get any information as to what that likely consultation would be?
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Staines.
I took the opportunity to go to a function organised by the Otago Chamber of Commerce where I think it was New Zealand's lead negotiator was talking about the progress in it and what the implications were, and many around the table questioned many of the questions that are being put up here. I think a way forward might be to ask, they won't do it in public because of the fact that the way the negotiation's going, it compromises New Zealand's position in trying to get what it wants. I think that was my reading in it. But I wonder whether as a council we should not ask if we could have a workshop, perhaps that workshop being in Chatham House rules as this was, to try and give us a better understanding. Then we're better informed before we try and take a position that may actually raise concern beyond where it should be, so at least we then understand where it is and have a better chance to put a position. I do believe that transparency is important in this, but I also understand the other side, which is that until there can be a meeting of the minds, they don't really want to show where New Zealand's final position is. Just a suggestion.
Councillor Peake.
On the subject, I wondered if Local Government New Zealand had already made any move on this, or I mean, it does seem like we're putting staff to some trouble here to try and analyse this and get a meaningful response. But I just wondered if LGNZ...
I'm not aware of any, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing some work. But I suspect that ultimately, if there were to be an approach from any council, it would be enhanced if it were done jointly through LGNZ, because if it's impacting on one council, it's going to impact on the other. Agreed. So, Councillor McTavish.
Well, my query was only in relation to the relevant committee, because I raised it under matters for notification to the chair at community development, at economic development. Was that where you guys were intending to send it with your resolution? Or
I didn't include, I didn't name the committee, I just think that we need to go around the houses about that. I'm not feeling particularly...
It's fine.
All right. Under discussion, Councillor Benson Pope, you wish to speak? I'll put it all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I think we'll take a 10-minute break now. Now, I don't know how many, or how much more of the corporate policy is there? Because I don't want to have you guys...
Chair, there are several pages.
They're here anyway. They're here anyway.
Right, 10 minutes and then we're back, but I caution councillors, we still have all the civic grants to get through and we've got not much more than an hour. Okay, quorum, we're on page 47, we're still on corporate policy. 48. 49. 49. Councillor Benson Pope.
Well, I thought, as you did, that the presentation from Tamangako and friends was pretty amazing, actually. And I'd like to think we might be able to assist in facilitating some sort of opportunity for these guys. I don't know where that might be. It might be in association with Task Force Green, what's left of it, if we've still got some, or some such. But I think there's potential for, or it might be in the sort of thing they were suggesting, but I think there's great potential to try and help these people develop gainful employment skills. And I can't imagine anyone better to actually to deter graffiti writers around town, actually. Thought it might be quite poetic. Certainly discourage the random use of felt pens. But there may well be some simple thing where we could sit alongside the group that came to talk to us and help these people get some gainful work that they say they want to get involved in. Check.
Yep, I have spoken to staff and we are exploring what we can do in this area. So I'm pretty keen that we pick something up as well.
They might be the perfect team, Mr. Chairman, for maintenance on George Street and fixing paving and all sorts of things.
Nighttime security. Councillor Wilson.
Well, I think I mean, I welcome that attitude, but I think there are a whole lot of community groups that equally would like to put their hands up to do some contracting which they see as providing jobs in their communities that we don't provide for, and I don't want to narrow this discussion down to one wonderful group that presented. Yeah, sorry.
I just was going to say that in that the reason that we mentioned the economic development strategy is because it's about pathways to work, and I think you're right. We need to look across the board at it.
And I was going to go further to say that I think the opportunities, we had a really good submission from 4 trades as well that I would like to consider in this realm as part of that discussion, but also where you've got communities that are trying to be more resilient and have local jobs for local people, where we take contractors up from Dunedin to do some jobs which could be in the community themselves, that it never opened up because we continue to look at large-scale contract jobs rather than breaking them down into parts.
So those issues are relevant to this as well. I'll come to you, Councillor McTavish. But in general, are the councillors content that the chief has got the consideration in hand and that we don't need a motion on it, or do you have
Your Worship, I have a view that it's actually an operational matter, that it pertains to procurement of staff and that it's not appropriate for us to discuss that at this level. The questions that I think we should be asking is whether our procurement policy is such that it is in line with our expectations about the relative weighting to various different components, whether that be apprenticeships as raised by 4 trades or local components which are constantly raised through Otago Chamber of Commerce, or whether it is social outcomes which is more in relation to the and I'm not sure where that procurement work is. I'm aware there's a review underway that's sitting within economic development, and I assume that will come back through economic development at some point for our discussion. But I'm comfortable with us having any more detailed conversation about it here, given that it is, in my view, an operational matter.
Look, I mean, knowing your attitude is useful. The procurement work isn't complete and certainly not at a level of detail that would prioritise something like this over something else. But at an operational level, I'm also keen to explore our role as good corporate citizens in some of these areas. So along the lines of some other thoughts we've had around employing students, employing people with disabilities, employing people with mental health issues, employing young people who've been on the wrong side of the law, that kind of thing. This is kind of what good corporate citizens do to a certain degree, and we're keen to be exploring those kind of issues. So it's a fit operationally.
Did you have something?
I just thought council might be interested to learn that since their submission, they've been extensively covered in the media across the country, and as a result, a number of approaches have been made, including a councillor from Gisborne who is hooking them up into a nationwide conference on a similar topic. And I also, the day after their submission, happened to be meeting with one of the managers from Te Puni Kōkiri, who is responsible for the Māori business mentoring, and am meeting with him on Monday, I think it is, to discuss possibilities in that field to ensure that any business models that they have in place are thought through with people who know how to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Look, I take on board what Councillor McTavish is saying, and I largely agree with her, but I would want to make one comment around the policy aspect of it, if I could, and that is that the precedent for working with particular groups has been well established by this council. We do it with postgraduate students through the whatever it's called, we just agreed to continue. We do it through the economic development strategy with various business people, and so I'm just preempting the kind of argument that I don't doubt will be run and that I've already received at least one complete diatribe about, which would imply that this was somehow working outside of the appropriate. We do it all the time. Whether we should do it with this, that's a separate issue for staff to work on.
Well, can I just, I think we're all confident that the Chief will pick it up. Can I just summarise by saying that I think that it's clear that there is a will both around the table at the governance level and at the operational level to explore ways to pick up on the offer that was made, and I think that it's for our community as well as our economy, it's very constructive. Yep. 40, not the rest of 49, 50. So we're on.
Yeah.
You've done that.
Yeah, we did that.
So where does that take us, Jenny?
64.
We've done 64 and 65. Oh, sorry. Right. Page 64, the top submission, the Bossard Brown submission. Does someone want to raise that? That's the one that's remaining. Corporate policy, right? Everyone's happy with that. So where can we?
Is it the input policy? Then we'll go into cultural.
Right. So I think Nicola and Maria, you're done. Welcome, Bernie.
Starting at page 75.
Page 75, Councillor. Right, so where, hang on.
This is Glen Chinese Garden.
Oh, this is down the bottom.
Yeah, these are all Burnley group areas, yeah. We'll come back to the council owned companies and got round up.
Right, bottom of page 75, and page 76. Sorry. Councillor Banks.
I was just wanting to not necessarily do anything, but note that Mr. Wyber was talking about quite a bit that we could do to improve the website. And I'm wondering if that's going to require any budget or whether staff can continue to improve the website within budget.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, but I think Bernie's from the two bottom ones down. I think we
But I can add those on.
Oh, you can?
We've been one person down in the web team with Sean Lee in China with his family. He's now back. Web team's back at full strength, and I think we're starting to see already picking up some of the things that have been a little slower than we might have otherwise wanted with the website. So I think these will be taken care of.
So they'll
without budgetary implication.
Particularly addressing some of the things that were said in submission.
They've written the response, which is saying that they apologise for the delay and they agree and that they're looking at those things.
Thank you.
Right. So good to get that one out of the way. That was good submission. Page 76. Councillor Metcalfe.
Your Worship, just in relation to the Brockville Community Support Trust, I appreciate that it's been, the community complex is raised here in relation to libraries, but it's a broader issue around that piece of work, and perhaps it's just something that I need to pick up with staff through C&E, and I'm happy to do that. But is there anything that we as a council should be doing to improve liaison with the group that are working on that proposal? Maybe I will ask it through C&E.
I think it comes through C&E. Right, page 77. Page 78.
Because that's all the staff we need in the libraries now, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Well, that's still done.
Bernie, yep, I've done that,
Yep.
And then it's 1, 2, 3.
But that's, we've dealt with South Dunedin Library.
Yep.
So we move on to
Page 1, 2, 3, which is the...
page 123.
Sorry, 85. Oh.
Sorry?
What's 1, 2, 3?
Your Worship, there is the matter of, I personally don't feel I need to do anything about it, but some members might, which is the issue raised by Dr. Griffin at the Otago Museum in relation to the museum levy.
There's nothing we can do this year.
Which is page 80.
Page 80.
he's happy, he's flagging it more for the long-term plan.
Fine.
Although, one thing that he has raised,
It
if
will
you
come
don't...
up with Orokonui.
No, with the cafe?
Yes, the
With the cost of the
Orokonui
rates?
comes later, it's not under libraries.
Okay.
It's rates one.
Righto. Where are we?
Well, 1, 2, 3.
Page 123.
Toy train.
So does that need to go, that particular one from the Strathclyde Community Board, does that need to go into the the grants list?
No, it isn't, so it's an operational grant, it refers to one that Trinity talked about yesterday.
One of those ones I said you should be able to tick off when you came to it.
Yeah, because we had we've done evolution down here. Is this what just here?
So we've
We've done it, it's ticked off yesterday. It's okay, I stepped back from it. This one next week,
1, 2, 3.
First one? That's the Wars Concert? Yeah, it's a session about the New Zealand.
Arts and culture.
Right. That's, and over the page is one other one. So that's it.
I'm just trying to find the art gallery.
Oh, it's separate. It's not on there.
It was under one.
It is,
It's on the decision.
Okay.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you. It was easy. So where's the amount?
No, I'll move pro forma that we give $10,000 to the Film Otago Southland as per their request. It doesn't, it says it under EDU grants. I'm only doing that pro forma, have the discussion. Or do you want to?
But don't we just lump it in? I would have thought we'd lump it in with the other grants.
It doesn't say that in the paper at the moment, sorry. It says under EDU grants, I thought.
Well, it shouldn't.
Yeah, that's okay.
I would.
Your Worship, I do have a question about that. There are a number of grants, or there are a number of, Film Otago is one of them, that came in as a grants request but didn't fill out the civic grants application form, and I just wonder whether that's perhaps a bit of a missing in terms of an internal link about the appropriate community grant process.
Your Worship, the Film Otago Southland is an economic development issue. And while I don't want to spend Des's budget, I suspect probably it should be considered as part of the funding from the investable fund, linked to, if it links into one of our strategic areas of focus, then we should consider whether it should be funded as part of that budget, can we?
I've had a relook at the submission, etc. And I've gone back through it again. I've found that it's a wee bit nebulous, you know, on what the achievements have been. And I guess I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable with the amount of money they're seeking. Yes.
Does that make it all the more reason why we should leave it to the contestable fund rather than here?
Look, I strongly would recommend that grants to external organisation for economic development purposes should be weighed up against each other through the single point of contact. If it's not delivering on the economic development strategy, then you shouldn't have it. Otherwise, don't bother having an economic development strategy.
And this is not a criticism of anyone, but I'm just feeling slightly uncomfortable about the fact that some requests come through one way and some come through another, and you expect them to end up in no criticism, but they're different types, they're different animals, but they all end up, some of them end up on one page and some of them end up somewhere else. So it would be good to clarify that a bit for the next time year's process.
Would you like a motion that the Film Otago request be considered by the GROW partnership group in the context of the economic development strategy?
I don't think you need a motion. We'll just change the response in here to tell them, and Des will give them a ring.
Sure.
EDU
No, right, back to page 85 for the rest of the EDU.
Your Worship.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Vanderbilt,
Yeah.
my apologies.
I was hoping that we could divide the issue on Otago Southland Film into two. One of them, do we as a council approve actually of what they're doing and think they're worthy of funding, and then where the funding comes from to be a separate issue. And I had a sense that just around the table that when we were submitting at least, that we were generally fairly much in approval of what they were doing, with a small amount of funding. And I'm wondering if we couldn't have a motion that gives staff an indication of where we sit in terms of how worthy we think this is, before they then go and have a look to see whether there's funds for it and how much.
Well, I'll entertain a motion. The only reservation I have is that, having listened to both the Chief and to Des, I personally don't feel that I'm in a position to make a call because I don't know enough. I don't know as much as Des does about it, so I would be uncomfortable voting either way.
Okay, so we're in a position where we don't really have enough evidence, if you like. We've just had the submission.
It's my feeling, yeah.
Right. I've got a wee bit of background on what they do because I used to be in that industry, and again I don't have enough to be able to say whatever, but my general feeling is that what they do has potentially got tremendous value for us in terms of a invest to save. This is an invest to bring all sorts, and I'd like to think that it was at least looked well into, despite the lack of evidence that they might suggest.
You take that information to the Economic Development Unit Manager.
Yeah.
And
I'll just talk informally about it. Thank you.
Right, what page are we on? 85.
Yeah, 85.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just raising in light of this morning's discussions about the Shanghai connection and the Otago Museum's interest and recognition of its cultural stuff going on in Shanghai. And I just wondered if, instead of no comment, I mean, is that what we're going to say? No comment on that when we return? I just wondered if there seemed to be a bit more of a positive response this morning, that's all.
I think we need.
Yes, from memory, I think it was asking that some funds are utilised from the economic development strategy to be utilised by the museum to go forward to Shanghai, etc. From memory, but I can have a talk with Mr. Christie about that, and we can also make the conversation a wee bit bigger than no comment. Yes.
Yeah,
that's all.
I think we'd need to be careful of precedents that were set where we were funding our partners' contributions to our joint efforts when we were all expecting to have to contribute. 86.
I think we've moved from economic development. We've moved on from economic development if you get on to 86.
Oh, right. So that was just that one page. Is there any other?
No, that was all.
I have noted, Your Worship, that the response to Northern Baka in relation to the Marketing and Communications Agency needs to be revised significantly. So maybe something for the Chair.
What page is that on?
I have no idea. I couldn't find it. That's why I noted it down myself.
I think we'll need to review where there's no comments made around things like the digital office. Obviously, we'll need to update those in terms of all the comments through the section.
But you just noted what Councillor Batter said about.
Is that in one of these economic developments?
Find it.
We'll find it. Okay.
Right, where it?
That's all. Let's all go to regulatory services, page 117. Kevin.
117 regulatory services.
There's two in the bottom and there's a couple of pages.
Mr. Chairman,
We're just finishing off with regulatory services, but I know we've missed one that we've actually already said we can deal with, so if I can just cover it, it's the one I think you said it was going to come up under Orokonui. We've started rating a small number of institutions a commercial cost to cover their... you can just sit back. We've started rating a small number of institutions to be rating on an even footing. We've realised that any commercial cafes that have to be rated, it's...
Page 88.
Okay, page 88. The museum, Toi 2, the art gallery, Orokonui, Eco Sanctuary, previously had cafes that got rated as community or something. We've realised we haven't been... so they've all been sent a letter telling them we have to rate them as commercial premises. It's a net nil cost if we now give them a grant to offset their commercial rate. So I've said I'll raise that here because it's money in with the one hand and a grant out with the other. We wouldn't add it to Otago Museum's general grant because that means that all the other councils would have to contribute a bit as well and we'd get back, they'd get more. But if we just simply give each of those institutions a top up that covers the cost of the commercial rate that now equal to the increase, it's a money go round with no net impact on the rates.
I can see the general point of that, but doing that with the likes of the museum is quite a different kettle of fish because it is just in a competitive environment.
Yes, the issue with all of these organisations is that they are heavily reliant on council subsidy. So the museum...
I fully appreciate the transparency and things. I just thought that they were already being rated, and if we...
No.
Yeah. They received a 0% rates increase for the last 4 or 5 years, and this year they've had 2%. So they're somewhat... it would be fair to say that every year for the last 3 or 4 years they've been dipping into their reserve in order to keep their head above water. The new imposition of the commercial rate for their cafe and shop means that they end up in a worse position. So the option was there and I said I'd put it to you, that's all.
Councillor Thompson.
I do have some concerns about this. I think that it's very difficult because the museum had a commercial operator in there running a cafe and they took a rental from that and now they want to run a cafe. And as a result, we get less rates revenue.
No, they weren't rated previously, ever. It's never. This is a brand new rate that we've never put on any of these institutions.
Okay, well then I'll rephrase my concern. Look, you're getting agitated.
I'm not.
They are competing against other commercial operators, and I take the point that I look at Orokonui, for example, and they're not competing against any commercial operator effectively, possibly the gardens place down at Waitati, but it's a slippery slope. I don't know.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm happy to move 1 year that we do this. The issue has arisen that they only got this notification sometime well after all these institutions started their financial planning. They didn't know it, they didn't expect it. We expect all these institutions to run to budgets and then we whack this with them with no notice. And so the issue here is that they need time to come to terms with the brand new world as it is. Because and so I'm happy to move that we, for 1 year, give them a rebate in order to allow them to come to terms with a different financial model. Because it is brand new, they weren't expecting it. And I'm not quite sure that we should be asking them to cover our own lack of communication with them on the issue. They had no idea it was coming.
Right, so the motion, and I'll come back to you. I need a seconder for that. I mean, effectively what you're saying is, the motion as I understand it, is to bring this issue to council in a more timely manner when we can explore it a little better, but in the meantime give a year's grace because of the shortness of time that was given to them.
Yes, I am. I'm feeling very
Second is Councillor Calvert. Councillor Bandervis.
It sounds, Councillor Wilson's suggestion sounds like a reasonable one, but I would like to know in the context of how long the contracts are between, say, Toy2 and their cafe supplier, how long those contracts are, because they're going to have to pass on this extra rating cost, supposedly. Are the contracts year to year? In which case Councillor Wilson's proposal makes very good sense, or are they 5-year contracts, in which case it may still be difficult for them in a year's time?
Well, I think that's exactly the point I'm making about giving us a year to explore it and find out what the implications are, because you make a very good point I hadn't thought about.
Right. Okay. So if we could get that contract information back, quite happy to move on and just support Councillor Wilson's.
Councillor Benson Pope.
Well, just on that point, isn't it a wee bit more subtle than that, because we don't at the moment know, unless the Chief Executive can tell us, when the various contracts do expire, and it would be silly to give someone a year if in 6 months there's going to be a new contract negotiated where this could kick in if we decided that it should. I mean, do they all roll over at the same time? I don't know.
They're different. Some of them have a contract with some of the new staff. I don't think it's the
That's right.
same. Have you had a promotion?
However, I can include in here.
Multi-skilled, are we? Multitasking?
I can include in here, or until the contract expires.
I think that would be sensible, so that we're fully flexible.
Ms. Latham, would you like to take your seat out?
Right, Councillor Benson, are there other speakers? There being none, Councillor Wilson, do you want to? Right. I think we've got it. It doesn't matter anyway. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right. Where are we now?
Kevin.
Oh, welcome, Kevin. Yep. What page? 117.
118.
117? Yep. I just think in the comment about, I'm sorry, it's the second last one, Darryl Hall's one from OUSA about alcohol. I think it would be useful to mention the imminent release of a draft local alcohol policy. I'm saying this for two reasons, so that OUSA is informed of their ability to submit shortly, and to remind councillors of the questionnaire that they've been asked to fill in over the weekend. Thank you very much. Right, sorry.
4:30.
Or next week, if you like.
117, 118.
Yep, two issues on 118. I think both of them are probably issues just to be picked up by the relevant committee. The first is Gerard Highland's submission in relation to dogs in cemeteries.
They dig up bones.
Sorry?
I asked, they dig up bones.
Oh.
It was too much information.
Okay, thank you. The second...
Do Middlemarch dogs dig 6 feet under, for goodness sake?
The Easter rabbits. Right.
The second issue is in relation to the keeping of animals and birds, excluding dogs and birds, bylaw 2010. Is it, just reading the response here, is it council staff's intention to review that bylaw imminently anyway, or would you need a council motion or resolution to review that bylaw?
Resolution. Through the chair, we prefer a resolution to do that, because it wasn't our intention. It's not that long ago that was put in, so it's not due for renewal or to be reviewed.
Okay. Well, it may be too early to do this, but my sense is that we do need to review this bylaw in relation.
Well, I'd suggest we bring that to planning regulatory, if that's the will of council to do that.
Perhaps the timing of that could be considered by planning and regulatory in the context of other requests. that-
I'll raise that at our briefing next week.
Sure.
Councillor Ben's supposed to be dying to talk about dogs.
Yes.
And dog control and cats. Sometimes, so we can bring it to planning and regulatory.
Thank you.
He'll lap it up.
Thank you.
My colleague is responsible for cats.
Right. 119.
No, 118, the last one.
Here's another Bible.
Motion I wanted to put, which I can't find my motion immediately, is that we ask the staff to liaise with the Chalmers Community Board to look at the viability, or the demand, the cost and the likely locations of such a park for the LTP.
We start. Yep. If that's a motion, I'm happy to second it.
Everyone happy with that? 119?
Your worship, well, are you going to put the if that's a motion?
I didn't think it was a motion, I just...
It doesn't have to be a motion, so, it's just a... Staff comment, yeah.
My question is whether it would be better to refer the submission to the Chalmers Community Board for them, because it could be that it's just an isolated case of someone wanting something, or it could be that there are a range of stakeholders that would be seeking.
Historically, there has been an approach to the community board 2 or 3 years ago about this topic. So
we can refer it from...
Absolutely. Yep.
519.
Yes.
10/11/23, that Friends v Torrey Dog Park. I just know they had been complaining about gorse that was outside their boundary, and I just wonder if that is council land, we need to get it in spray, and if it's not council land, actually point out to them that it's actually not our problem.
Yep. That can go in the response.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's right.
I can actually comment on that too. We've already priced a fencing around where the water is, and we're looking at going ahead with that, and we'll also price the lighting and other things that they've asked. It was a very full plan they put in, a lot of work went into it, it was good. So it's all going to come down to what we can afford to do. And as far as the barley grass and things like that, I'm working with PARS, and they're going to factor anything that needs to be done there into their regular maintenance program.
Do you know if we're the landholder of the land over the fence outside the boundary?
I'm not sure. I'll
They
find out.
specifically said about that.
Yes.
So can I just ask Kevin, if you've priced it, is it something that you would be doing within operational budgets if you deemed it worthy, or does it have to come back to council?
No, it would be out of our existing budget. We do have lighting in the Kew Dog Park, so that's a very small one, so it does work and people can use it at night, but that East Torrey one is one of our biggest ones, if not the biggest. So that it could be some issues with the, the ability to light it and where to light it.
But it's not without precedent?
No.
To light?
That's right, yes.
Your Worship, in light, I have written to Mr Munn and suggested he brings it to the Mosgiltara Community Board, because I think it's important to have that discussion in light of the motion we've already put, that maybe they can assist with some of that funding and having that done with the community rather than us just doing it by ourselves. So going to the community board may be the better way of progressing that discussion.
That's good. Keep them in the loop. Yeah. All right. 119. 120. Councillor Wilson.
I rang Mr Kenny about his submission, and I wasn't quite sure where this car park was. Do we have a standard that we require other car parks to be at? In the city, if someone puts a car park, do we require them to asphalt them?
Yeah. Through the chair, this is the York Place car park, and it really just comes down to what we can afford to do to maintain it. Also, we don't want to asphalt a car park when it's going to be used or something's been built on it. That's not a good way of spending the money, but we do regularly maintain all the car parks.
Thank you for that information. It wasn't actually my question. And I'm happy not to asphalt it necessarily, but the question was, do we require other people in the area, if they're putting in car parking, to seal them?
No.
No? That's good.
No. Yeah.
No, that's right.
Councillor Benson.
Kevin, in relation to the statement you just made about maintaining car parks, does that include weed control?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And that's up to date at the moment, does it? As far as you know?
I'd have Depends how much weed, I suppose, next time.
You can check tomorrow, I'll do it the next day, thank you.
Okay, so that's nothing, that's the end of regulatory services.
Have we got
it's under page 154.
154, which is
Water waste.
water waste. 154.
Here. Sorry, what, 154, is that what you said?
Right. Welcome. Anything on 154?
Do we have any good news from the ORC in terms of EnviroSchools yet?
Yes. Any more?
And EnviroSchools annual plan?
Oh, we forgot to ask them this morning.
They're not deliberating together.
They're finished.
Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, on EnviroSchools, if the ORC does fund the position that we currently fund, what happens to the money that we've now got allocated to that position?
We'll come back to you with a report with some options for whether you want to pay off debt or what you want to do.
It is tag funding, so we can't use it for anything.
Look, some of it's from waste levies, so I don't know how much discretion you have.
Yeah, that's fine.
Actually, so it won't be paying off debt, but it might be using for other waste min, for example.
155.
Motion for our debt.
Motion.
Oh, right. So there's a motion. Councillor Lord, you're moving something?
Indeed, yep. I'm happy.
Right.
He wants reasonably costly legislation.
I just would add, I'm not expecting like the West Torrey water scheme with 10, 12,000 cows to get fluoride. I'm just thinking more of to the greater ones where the majority of people are.
Do you not want your cows to have better teeth?
They've got good teeth. We put it on the paddocks.
Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Calvert. So it's moved Lord, seconder Calvert. Councillor Lord, would you like to speak further to this? Want to speak further to this?
I just think in view of the excellent presentation we had from the Department of Health, I feel that this is something that we should consider costing and see if it is something that's feasible and within a reasonable budget. And I'm not the one to determine what's reasonable. Obviously, we can determine from the report.
Councillor Calvert.
I'd just like to, and I don't know whether to slightly change that, but I'd like to make sure it was, when it says at the current levels, if we decided to have the current levels at fluctuating to still achieve the minimum therapeutic dose, that the current levels included whatever the levels of the rest of council was.
Point of order, just for the councillor's information, I was about to move exactly that we revert to the previous level, and previous council dropped the level.
Yeah.
So that might cover the...
Well, can I suggest then, in light of that, if that's a second motion, we'll probably come to it, that the word currently changed to recommended. Because they're recommended by the central authority or whatever. Happy with that?
Yep, very happy.
Right. Okay. Councillor New.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to ask a question of the staff rather than asking staff to write a report to give us the question or the answer to the question. I think it might be a cheaper way, but you've got Mosgiel community being fed by the Bore water system. You currently supplement at the odd time when the bores aren't through a drought situation or whatever. How, in a practical sense, how could you, unless you're bringing water down from Mount Grant, how would you, in a practical sense, add the fluoride if you currently haven't that capacity within the Mosgiel Township?
For the Mosgiel situation, there's basically two ways that the fluoride could be added. It would be, one way would be to make the Mount Grant supply the permanent supply and the existing bore water supply, its status change, just simply a backup. The pipe network is in place. There would be a few things that need to be checked as to whether other things need to be done to the network. The other option would be to retrofit fluoridation equipment at the 5 water treatment plants out at Mosgiel. There would have to be an investigation into the most appropriate technology. I'm aware of 3 different types of technology that are commonly used around the world. So in terms of not just Mosgiel but the whole lot, if it came down to putting fluoridation in equipment in at the water treatment plants, we're talking about 9 water treatment plants. I was looking back at the last time we replaced a fluoridator, that was at Mount Grant back in 2008. It was $68,000 to supply and install it. Very simplistically, multiplying that by 9, you get around about $600,000. Now, I'm not saying that just gives a rough idea of one possible costing which may emerge out of it. In terms of Mosgiel, though, my gut feeling is if council was to decide to extend fluoridation to Mosgiel, the most practical way would be to switch it to the Mount Grant supply. The other thing that's probably relevant to note that the 2008 resolution by council that if it was to be extended to these areas, that full consultation with the affected people would take place. Hopefully that answers the question.
I would suggest we're on a hiding nothing.
Councillor Noon.
I'll reserve my right to speak later.
Oh, right, Councillor Vance.
Have you got a rough idea what the additional testing for levels costs might be over 9 new fluoridating outfits?
Of the order of about $4,000 per annum.
For all 9 of them, or for each one?
For all 9.
For all 9 of them? Yes. So you'd get someone that would go around all the different plants and test them? Yes,
you've got to sample each scheme once it goes in and test it.
Thank you.
Councillor Noon, do you want to pick up your...
I won't be supporting this. We've had discussions over the years, and I appreciate where Councillor Lord's coming from in light of the very full and thorough presentation we had from Public Health South. But I think in my own view is that currently we've got probably about 80% of the population covered or near enough to it. And I think the balance of the community haven't come to us in their droves suggesting that they want their areas covered. And I'm just reluctant to sort of push that from this end. I'd rather see it driven from the community if that's their wish. And I think one of the things with the city, it allows choice currently. If you don't want to receive fluoridated water, there are parts of the city that you can reside in and receive non-fluoridated water. So I'd rather see it the status quo retained.
Councillor McCall.
Well, I was just going to ask Your Worship, I won't, I'll keep it because it's not really a question.
Councillor Thomas.
No, mine's not a question either, but I thought because...
No, we're in discussion.
Well, look, I also appreciate the intent of Councillor Lord's motion, and I support Councillor Noon's comments in relation to the fact that I think that this request should at least come from the community boards. Having said that, perhaps we could arrange for a similar presentation to the one that we had the benefit of to be made to community boards so that they have the knowledge and the information to make their own determination in this regard. The reason for that is because I think anything that's imposed from above is really likely to result in a lot of angst for those communities, and that's not something that I want to impose on a community. So that would be my sense.
Okay. Councillor, you asked a question, Councillor Banbus.
I would be very concerned if we were to get feedback from Mosgiel and other areas on the basis of the kind of presentation that the dental authorities gave us. The authorities gave us literally scores of detailed scientific studies, most of them New Zealand based, all of which showed very strong benefits for fluoride. If we're going to get proper feedback, what we would, I believe, be obliged to do is also advise Mosgiel or wherever we're going to extend of all the other studies that are done around the world, especially in mainland Europe, which have a quite different view. If we leave it simply to our local dental health professionals to provide the information, you're only going to get absolutely one very focused point of view, and it's not information unless you get both sides of the story.
Councillor Thompson.
I don't think there's any worry about getting both sides of the story. It'll come in bucket loads. Look, I just want to pick up on what Councillor Noon said. I support this resolution, and I just would remind Councillor Noon that in Hamilton recently, their city council voted to take fluoride out of the water, and subsequently in a referendum their population voted to put it back in.
And can I add to that I think the referendum actually happened before they made the call, and they basically then had to resign.
Thank you, Worship.
I will be supporting this motion because I see this, if the report that comes back, certainly after the detail we've been given by staff here, will be pretty short, and I see this as only a start of the process anyway, because if we were to move ahead as we've been told and as we've agreed before, we would be consulting. So this is really just get a bit of information, and then we know, then we can make a call on whether we want to go forward. Councillor Lord, do you want to exercise your right of reply?
Well, I would just say...
Sorry, Councillor Peake.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a bit wary about this because I think there are 4 community boards involved in this, and I don't think any of them actually asked us to investigate a fluoridation proposal, and I'm just wondering whether this looks like a little bit of a we know best, and we'll obviously ask for some comment back from them, but yeah, I would have preferred to see it coming from the community boards.
Councillor Lord, your right of reply.
Yeah, well, like I say, I'm supportive of it, and the reason I'm supportive of it is because I've asked for a report. I haven't asked for anything more than that, and it may well be that we can actually look in that for a relatively low cost we can go in and put fluoride in Mosgiel without even buying a fluoridator, just by going through Mount Grand, and it may be a relatively cost neutral sort of a thing. We did get a submission from Vivian Kerr, and there were others that did put written submissions in supporting the use of fluoride, and I just think it's something that we should consider and look at. So, you know, it's up to council to decide what they want to do, but I'm supportive. Right. Oh, the other thing is we can do a relatively cheap report and still decide not to proceed. I'm not wanting to necessarily spend $600,000.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask you for an amendment, but I realise he's had his right of reply, so...
Right, I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No. Recorded, please.
Carried. Division.
Councillor Benson Pike. Aye. Councillor Calvert.
Aye. Councillor Hall.
Aye.
Councillor Hawkins.
Aye.
Councillor Lord.
Aye.
Councillor McTavish.
Abstain.
Councillor Noon.
No.
Councillor Peat.
No.
Councillor Staines.
Aye.
Councillor Thompson.
Aye.
Councillor Vanderdiss.
No.
Councillor Wiley, Scotland. Councillor Wilson.
Aye.
Your Worship.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I'd like to record my reason for abstention if I can, that being that I think the community board should be consulted first. Thank you.
That would all be
I was going to say community to that effect.
All right. Thank you.
Mr Chairman.
Councillor Betts.
As I said earlier, I want to come back to the issue of the level of fluoridation. It's my understanding that, from the media largely, that Council previously reduced whatever level had previously been administered into the system to a lower level. It's been suggested that at that time, and subsequently in some of these submissions, that that level is less than optimal, and I would like to see the council consider either a decision now or a report. I'm quite happy for it not to be urgent, to come back to council, if people would prefer that, about returning to the levels recommended by the Ministry or Public Health South or whoever makes such recommendation.
Okay. Can I suggest that this could come, if there's no, certainly there's no rush, it could come to infrastructure services rather than here.
I'm quite happy about that.
I don't see any advantage in dealing with it in the annual plan.
No, that's fine.
Well, just so long as it's, people are aware and it's noted in the response that a report will be provided to ISCO, considering changes on the basis of the last 6 months of information from the...
Yep, that's fair. All right. 156, 58.
Are we now in water and waste?
We're still in water and waste.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
159.
I do have one in relation to a couple of issues in relation to the CBD area and recycling in the CBD area. I'd like to understand the timeframes for work around that if possible.
Me too.
And the South Dunedin CBD is also raised by Jane Orbell.
What page is that?
Page 157.
I take it this is in order to give an informed response to the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's going to have Chair's meeting on Tuesday, isn't it?
If we don't have an answer now, it's fine. It just needs to be included in the response. And yeah. Yeah, no,
It is on the Chair's agenda.
Yeah, okay.
So I can't give you the answer, but I know it's on the Chair's agenda.
And it can be?
Yeah, it can be added. Yeah, we'll make sure it's added in.
So is your question been answered, or?
Well, I don't think the answer is at hand, is the sense I'm getting.
It's probably about 3 months away.
Okay.
The answer or the two?
Probably the report.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, as long as that can be included in the response to the... Councillor Thompson.
Look, I'm desperately trying to find it, but I can't. There's a question of a targeted rate for a particular dwelling, which is comes under...
Patrick Moody. And he wanted a targeted rate to pay for the sewage connection that he didn't put in the start because he was misinformed.
That's probably in finance.
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could be.
financial, you've got a section for rates.
I think it's in finance somewhere. You'll trip over it. So we can now.
If it's the water. Sorry, the Smeatons. Smeatons said that they wanted water and to the site in Duke's Road. It was a submission and it's a long...
I think it's under finance.
Again, but well, it could go underwater, and I'm just wondering, have the costings been done for that work?
That's underway and it's coming to ELT. I'm hoping it's not complete yet, so we're hoping to have it to ELT as quick as we can. And the finance team are also looking at an interim assistance or solution because we're aware that there's an anomaly here.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, from what I understand, we're at the end of water and waste. We are not at the end of the decision sheet, but we are at the end of our time, pretty much. So, my understanding is that staff have been endeavouring to clear, at least my diary, of Monday morning, and they have, and so we'll resume on Monday.
At 9:30.
9:30, okay. Now, can
I've got somebody who's flying down from Auckland to have a meeting with me on Monday morning, so I can't put them off now.
Well, we had a good scout. I mean, I'm open to other times, but we had a good scout through diaries and things, and Monday morning was one of the only ones that we could find when
Your Worship, I value that some councillors have sat around this table almost all the time and will want to express certain views on these issues, and I'm asking for a leave of standing orders that they can submit by email their views to enhance the debate. I think it's not fair on the submitters that they're not able to incorporate that.
If council is comfortable with that, I'm more than comfortable with it.
I don't believe you even have to suspend standing orders. There is provision made for people to, for councillors to actually forward their views. They are now able to forward a vote. That's
great.
Sort of like a telephone bit of an auction or something.
It's not perfect, but it's as good as we can get. Now, can I also add that what has been distributed to you, or will be, and certainly will be electronically, is a small extra... A small extra item for council meeting on Monday afternoon. I've recently received a request, and you'll see it there, from Wellington Council to support their remit to the conference, and the remit is about engaging with government on earthquake strengthening. I have taken the time to check with Dr. Hazelton that the remit is consistent with the submissions that we have made already, and all they're seeking is another territorial authority to support the remit at the National Council, National Conference, but that is not mine to say. I need council permission to give that support. That will be coming as a late item to council meeting, and the information on it will be circulated tonight. So just to let you know what that's about. Thank you all for your attendance and contribution, and we will resume on Monday morning.
Hilarious.